Chapter 40-25. Little Chen immediately replied, "No, I don't. He doesn't know how to cook or do any housework." He paused for a moment before he added, "But he is much smarter than Yu. Also, when Yu heard this, he lifted his eyes and looked at Xianxia with a kind expression. With just one look, Xianxia felt as though he had seen hell through his eyes. Xianxia said, Yu is still the cutest." Yu finally stopped looking at him. He blinked his eyes gently and snorted. "At least you know what's good for you." Xianxia laughed and immediately covered his face. However, he thought to himself, is this really not Gong Fan? Is this really the gentle and considerate Yu? Why does he suddenly have a kind expression that only Gong Fan has? It was so scary. When Xianxia saw this, she couldn't help feeling a little cold. "Your expression just now was so scary." Xianxia was so scared that he didn't even dare to eat his chicken wing. Xianxia hugged his rice bowl and lowered his head to eat his rice. Wuxia was curious. "You don't know what kind of personality he has?" Yu didn't seem to understand. Wuxia didn't know how to explain it. It was hard for him to put it into words. Xianxia immediately explained on behalf of Wuxia. "What your daddy wants to ask is how he usually is and what he does. Don't you know?" Yu shook his head. "I don't know. I only know that he must be a very cold child. However, since he is very gentle with mommy, I reserve the right to let him exist." When Xianxia heard this, he suddenly felt a chill down his spine. It turned out that Yu was the final boss. Gong Fan was so scary and terrifying. However, the only thing that determined his existence was Yu, who was smiling as innocently as a little white flower. He was the real demon king hiding behind Gong Fan. "I haven't cooked in a long time. I don't know if my culinary skills are still as good as before." Yu asked Xianxia, "Mommy, does my cooking taste good?" "It's delicious. Don't you think it's delicious?" Yu licked his lips and said worriedly, "My sense of taste seems to have lost its sensitivity." "Oh, yesterday. He ate too much bitter gourd, so his taste buds are a little off." Yu was rather disgusted when he heard that. Why would he want to eat bitter gourd? "Because he played a game with me and lost." Xianxia said proudly, "The loser had to eat all the bitter gourd. Hence, he took all the bitter gourd. When he brushed his teeth at night, he said that he couldn't even taste the toothpaste. That's probably the reason." Yu's eyes were filled with disdain. He didn't expect Gong Fan to have such a childish side. It was unimaginable. He had always thought that Gong Jie was the kind of child who was cold and serious and would never play with Xianxia. Wuxia commented, "It's much better than before." Xianxia said, "It must be because you haven't tasted Yu's cooking for too long." "Who has been cooking for so long?" Yu suddenly asked. Xianxia and Xianxia looked at each other and said awkwardly, "The nanny." Yu was speechless. He had thought that mommy would cook for them herself. He didn't expect her to be so lazy. Chapter 40-26. After Yu's return, the family finally regained some vitality. The so-called vitality was hard to describe with words. At least, Xianxia was no longer suffering from insomnia and could finally sleep soundly at night. At night, Yu was reading a book. He had the habit of reading, something that Gong Fan did not do. Xianxia snuck into the room. Seeing that he was holding a book and reading with great interest, he did not have the heart to disturb him. Instead, he moved a chair and sat beside him. He rested his chin on his hand and looked at him quietly. Yu saw him walk in from the corner of his eye. He thought that he was going to disturb his reading and pester him to play with him. However, he was a little surprised when he realized that he was just sitting there quietly and did not make any requests. He put down his book and looked at Xianxia. He was a little surprised and asked, "What are you doing?" Xianxia rested his chin on his hand lazily and looked at him. He said jealously, "Do you know what I envy the most about you?" Xianxia said honestly, "No matter which personality it is, whether it's Gong Fan or you, your studies are top-notch. Why don't I have the talent for studying?" Yu smiled when he heard this. "No matter which personality it is, they are all smart. I envy you too." "Oh." When Xianxia heard that Yu was envious of him, he asked eagerly, "What are you envious of?" I envy your stupidity. Xiao Yichen was confused. Huh? Stupidity? Yu said matter-of-factly. You know, fortune favors fools. Usually, those who are a little stupid don't think too much and don't worry too much. You see, the smarter the person, the more troubled they are. However, those fools and idiots are happy every day. I don't know what they are happy about. Xiao Yichen was speechless. He thought that Yu was going to praise him. However, he was shot in the knee. So infuriating. Xiao Yichen hugged his arms angrily and glared at Yu. I'm your brother. How can you bully me like this? Yu raised her eyebrows and did not say anything. Suddenly, she thought of something and asked curiously, Do you know the girl who sits next to me? Qing'er. Yu racked her brains for a long time, but she could not remember her name. I think so. After Yu returned, he did not delay his studies and was now in the 4th grade. Today, when he went to class, the girl sitting next to him seemed to treat him differently. At first, she seemed to be very afraid of me, but I kept seeing the way she looked at me. It was a little special, but I couldn't describe it. It just felt weird. Yes, Qing'er likes you. Xiao Yichen smiled. In the past, when you weren't around and Gong Fan was you, he was known to be a cold prince in school. Prince. When Yu heard this, she couldn't help but laugh. Were all little girls nowadays so childish? How could she use the word prince to describe a boy? Yu asked curiously, what was Gong Fan like in school? He didn't like to talk much. No matter who he was to, he was cold and aloof. His grades were especially good. He was the kind who could easily get first place in school. Chapter 40-27. Yu was a little stunned. Were girls so precocious these days? She was already experiencing her first awakening of love. Then, what about you? Xiao Yichen was a little surprised when he heard this. Yu, are you concerned about me? I'm so touched. Yu replied, just take it that you're concerned about me. Xiao Yichen became proud. I play very well with the boys in school. You have a lot of brothers. Yes. Why? Yu raised his eyebrows. Why aren't you popular with the girls? I don't usually like to play with girls. Xiao Yichen continued, girls don't know how to play football or basketball. They can't even swing a tennis racket, so we can't play together. I see. Yu picked up his book again and started reading quietly. Xiao Yichen yawned a few times and rubbed his eyes. He was sleepy, so he stood up and went back to his room to rest. Xiao Yichen and Yu were in the same school and class. They sat in the same row, front and back. However, the two people's results were very different. Xiao Yichen wasn't bad at his studies, but he didn't like to study. Xianxia wasn't strict in this aspect. To her, Xiao Yichen and Yu were at the age when they were the least stressed. It wouldn't be too late for them to focus on their studies when they were in junior high school. They should play well in elementary school. Moreover, boys in elementary school were very energetic. She didn't want her two children to be bookworms who only knew how to study. Yu was different. He liked to read. Although Gong Fan wasn't as interested in books as Yu, he liked to read many reference books and foreign books. He also liked to read novels, mystery books, and suspense books. On the other hand, Xiao Yichen was very playful. He played soccer, basketball, and especially tennis. His skills were top-notch. In this aspect, Xianxia was more indulgent. She even learned how to play tennis. When she had nothing to do, she would play with Xiao Yichen. But in the end, it was embarrassing. She was an adult, but she couldn't play as well as Xiao Yichen. Xiao Yichen and Yu were quite popular in school. Don't look down on children nowadays. They are all very mature. Girls liked to watch idol dramas and began to read romance novels. They also had hazy fantasies about love. There were also two couples in Yu's class. However, Yu did not like to play with girls. During class that day, Yu came to class. Just as she was about to put her bag on the table, she found something in it. She took it out and it turned out to be a box of Godivan chocolates. The quality of the chocolate was not low, and the price was not low either. A box only cost a few yuan, but it cost a few hundred yuan. The school he attended was the most famous elite school in the capital. Most of the children who studied here were born rich and had extraordinary family backgrounds. Their pocket money for a day was equivalent to a month's salary for an ordinary wage earner. It was natural for them to be able to afford such expensive chocolates. Yu stared at the chocolates in a daze. She wondered who had sneakily stuffed them into her desk. Her deskmate, Qing'er, returned to her seat. When she saw the chocolates in Yu's hand, she blushed but did not say anything. She sat upright in her seat and took a book to cover her blushing face. Chapter 4028. From the looks of it, this box of chocolates was a gift from Qing'er. However, he didn't eat chocolate. Xianxia, who was behind him, stuck his head out and smelled the aroma of chocolate. He moved closer to Yu and was a little surprised to see him holding a box of chocolates. Wow, chocolate! Where did you get it? Yu replied honestly. I don't know. I don't know who gave it to me. You don't know who gave it to you? Yeah, I saw it on my desk when I came this morning. Xianxia smiled and asked tentatively, Can I eat it? Yu smiled and said, What if you gave it to the wrong person? Maybe it's not for me. Xianxia immediately said, That's impossible. Since it's on your desk, it must be for you. With that said, he picked up a piece of chocolate and stuffed it into his mouth. The rich chocolate melted in his mouth and touched his snow-white teeth. Xianxia exclaimed that it was delicious. His exclamation attracted the attention of the others. When they heard that there was something delicious, the other students in the class who had arrived early also gathered around. When they saw Yu holding a box of chocolates, they were pleasantly surprised. Some had only seen it but not eaten it. Some had eaten it often. They heard a child say with a red face, This chocolate is delicious. My mom bought a box last time and I finished it all in one night. Really? It's delicious. Yu, I want to eat it too. Can I eat it? I want to eat it too. Yu was very generous. He placed the box on the table and said with a smile, If you want to eat it, go ahead. In no time at all, the box of chocolates was quickly emptied. At this moment, Qing'er's expression changed. She looked at the classmates with dissatisfaction and asked Yu, aren't you going to eat it? She was still a little angry as she said, If you all finish the chocolates, what will Yu eat? Xianxia didn't know what was going on. With his low EQ, he snorted and said, You didn't give it to him. Why are you so agitated? When Qing'er heard this, she felt even more embarrassed. She muttered, How am I agitated? I saw that Yu didn't eat a single piece, so I felt wronged for him. The classmates looked at each other and smiled. Yeah, Yu, aren't you going to eat? Yu. Yu is too generous. He gave the chocolates to others but didn't get to eat any himself. The boy smiled faintly. I don't like chocolate. It's fine as long as you think it's delicious. He didn't know how many people were mesmerized by his smile. Yu looked very good when he smiled. It was especially charming. He didn't smile as brightly as Xianxia. He only curved his lips slightly, revealing his white teeth. His delicate eyebrows relaxed and his eyes curved like crescent moons. It was especially beautiful. Although he was young, he still had a gentle temperament. Even Qing'er couldn't help but stare blankly at his exquisite side profile. She didn't regain her senses for a long time. Yu, you're smiling again. Yu looks really good when he smiles. The group of children looked as if they had discovered a new world. They pointed at Yu and made a big fuss. Yu, on the other hand, was scared out of his wits. Xianxia saw that he was in a daze and immediately explained, You rarely smiled in the past, so of course they're making a fuss over nothing. Chapter 4029. As he said this, he put his arm around Yu's shoulder and boasted to the others, My brother looks good when he smiles. Don't crowd around here. It's almost time for the morning reading. As soon as he said this, a group of girls excitedly squeezed past Xianxia and started talking to Yu. Yu, smile again. You look especially charming when you smile. Smile again. Qing'er was a little uncomfortable. In fact, Yu had already guessed that she was the one who had given him this box of Godivan chocolates. She had saved up some pocket money and bought a gift box. She was the first to arrive in class and secretly stuffed the box of chocolates into her desk. In the end, Yu came and opened the box of chocolates. She secretly observed him but still did not see any change in his expression. She thought that he did not like it. In the end, the group of people crowded around her. Before long, all the chocolates were snatched away. She could not help but feel a little angry. This box of chocolates was a gift from her to Yu Yu. Even if he did not like them, they would be eaten by irrelevant people if they were to rot in his hands. Xianxia was a little angry. Yu Yu also observed her expression but did not say anything. During the morning reading, Xianxia was still angry when Yu Yu suddenly passed her a neatly cut note. She was a little surprised and pleasantly surprised. She took the note and saw a line of delicate and beautiful handwriting. "Thank you for the chocolates." Xianxia looked up in surprise and saw Yu Yu looking at her sideways. He raised his eyebrows and blinked. It meant that he knew that this box of chocolates was from her. Xianxia did not know why, but she felt wronged and replied to him. "The chocolates are for you, but you didn't eat a single piece. I'm so angry." There was even an angry emoticon at the end. After a while, another note was passed over. It said, "I don't like chocolates, but isn't it good to share good food with everyone?" There was also a warm emoticon at the end. Xianxia finally mustered her courage and replied, "Can I talk to you?" Yu Yu was a little surprised when she saw this. Had she not spoken to him even though they had been deskmates for so long? No wonder Xianxia felt a little jealous when she saw him smiling at the other students. It seemed that Gong Fan usually did not talk to her. In fact, that was indeed the case. Xianxia had once mustered up the courage to talk to Gong Fan, but in the end, she was blocked by Gong Fan's cold gaze. He was so scared that he almost cried. After a while, Yu Yu's note arrived. "Sure." Happy face when Xianxia saw this, she smiled knowingly and carefully kept the note into the pencil case, as if she had found a treasure. This was the note that Yu Yu had sent to her. It was also the first note that she had sent to him. Moreover, she could finally talk to the boy she liked. In the future, they should also become good friends, right? Xianxia liked Yu Yu, and it was not a superficial kind of like. Instead, it was a form of worship and adoration. Yu Yu had good grades and was good-looking. The teachers doted on him a lot, and all the students in the class liked him. However, Gong Fan's personality was more cold. Other than Xiao Yichen, no matter who it was, he was cold and indifferent. However, the other children all felt that this kind of personality was very cool, especially when Gong Fan casually answered those questions that were enough to leave many students in a terrible state. Their admiration for him was even more evident in their words and expressions. Chapter 40-30. However, one day, Gong Fan was no longer as cold as before. After Yu Yu returned to school, he was no longer as cold as before. Gradually, some children mustered up the courage to talk to him. Although they were afraid that Yu Yu would reject them or treat them coldly, they pretended not to see or hear him. In the end, the gentle Yu Yu responded to them with a smile. This encouraged the children in the class and they all went up to talk to him. Only Xianxia did not dare to. In the past, she had mustered up the courage to speak to Gong Fan, but Gong Fan did not even look at her in the eye. Xianxia became a little disappointed. She thought that Gong Fan hated her. This time, Yu Yu replied to her with a note, which encouraged her. When class was over, she sat in her seat, hesitating. The children in the class had run to the corridor to play. The field was downstairs. Some children took the opportunity to play games on the field after class. There were only a few people left in the classroom. Yu Yu sat in his seat and was reading a mystery novel. Xianxia took a look and saw that the title of the book was in English. Although she had studied English for 3 years, she still found it difficult to understand. Yu Yu looked very charming when he was reading. He lowered his head. The morning light seemed to have plated a layer of silver on his face. He was engrossed in reading. His fair jade-like fingers pinched the pages of the book and flipped a page from time to time. Xianxia looked around and finally mustered up the courage to speak. "Yu Yu, what book are you reading?" Yu Yu was pulled back from his thoughts by her voice. He returned to his senses and said calmly, "Murder on the Orient Express." Wow, this book title sounds so scary. It's a mystery novel. I've read the translation before, but this is the original book. I plan to read it again. After a pause, Yu Yu explained again, "I like reading mystery novels." Mystery novels? Xianxia thought for a moment and immediately thought of it. Mystery novels, are they the same as Detective Conan? Yes. I've also watched Detective Conan before. It's very good. That means that we all like the same things. I like to reason too. Qing'er wanted to get closer to Yu Yu. Yu Yu could tell that Qing'er was trying to get closer to him, but he did not say anything. Instead, he turned around and continued to focus on his novel. Qing'er saw that he was so absorbed in reading the novel, and she didn't have the heart to disturb him. But seeing that there was no one in the classroom, if she missed this gathering, perhaps the next opportunity to talk to him, she didn't know when would be. She finally gathered her courage and asked, Can we be friends? Yu Yu frowned and smiled helplessly. Aren't we friends now? Because of this smile, Qing'er's heart skipped a beat and she lost her mind. She lowered her head shyly and said sheepishly, Are we considered friends? Yeah, I guess so. Yu Yu smiled again and said, All the classmates in this class are my friends, aren't they? Qing'er's face froze when she heard this. She looked at Yu Yu in a daze and felt a little disappointed. Her disappointment was so obvious that Yu Yu couldn't help but ask, What's wrong with you? Why do you look like that? Chapter 40-31. Qing'er's face froze when she heard this. She looked at Yu Yu in a daze and felt a little disappointed. Her disappointment was so obvious that Yu Yu couldn't help but ask, What's the matter with you? Why do you look like that? I'm talking about friends, not friends like this. Then what kind? I hope that my friendship with Yu Yu is special, that is, she couldn't describe that feeling. Qing'er's words were a little clumsy, but in reality, she hoped that she could become Yu Yu's most special friend. She hoped that they could share each other's secrets and that their friendship would be better than that of the other children in class. His only good friend. His best friend. But Qing'er couldn't bring herself to say it. But she blamed herself for being too greedy. She was already extremely lucky to be able to talk to Yu Yu. Why did she have to ask for so much? In any case, she could talk to Yu Yu now. Then, from now on we're good friends, right? Yu Yu replied with an and lowered his head to continue reading his novel. Qing'er didn't want to disturb Yu Yu any further. She didn't want to annoy Yu Yu, so she leaned on the table obediently. When Yu Yu wasn't looking, she took out the piece of paper with Yu Yu's handwriting and read it a few times. The more she read, the more she liked it. Yu Yu's handwriting was so beautiful. He must have been practicing writing with a fountain pen since he was young. She had the habit of practicing writing when she was young, but she couldn't persevere. Even though she couldn't persevere, she still practiced for a long time. But now, her handwriting wasn't as beautiful as Yu Yu's. After school, in the car, Xianxia saw Yu Yu looking out of the window quietly. He nudged his elbow gently. Have you finished your homework? Yu Yu glanced at him. Although it was just a glance, he knew what was on his mind. Do you want to copy it? Xianxia was instantly embarrassed. What do you mean by copying? It's just a reference. What's there to learn from the answer? Yu Yu, don't be so cruel. Let me have a look. I want to see what kind of thoughts you have when doing the questions. You dozed off during class. It's obvious that you don't know how to do the questions. You're starting to get serious. Yu Yu paused and glanced at him with disdain. But you're obviously using your serious energy in the wrong place. Xianxia pouted and started to play the tender card. Big brother loves you. Brother dotes on you. You're my favorite little brother. With that, Xianxia pouted and moved closer to Yu Yu to kiss him. Yu Yu slapped his face in disdain. Stay away from me. I'm allergic to idiots. Xianxia was stunned when he heard this. He said a name in a daze, Gong Fan. When Yu Yu looked back, his gaze was no longer gentle. Instead, it was cold and indifferent. Xianxia was no stranger to him. What's wrong? Little Chen opened his mouth, wanting to cry out in alarm, but when he met his uncle's cold gaze, he swallowed it back down his throat. It's you. He pursed his lips and stopped talking. Gong Fan looked out of the window and glanced at Xianxia. He was a little confused. Where are we? In the car. What car? Chapter 40-32. In the car. Gong Fan frowned but did not say anything. Xianxia explained, This is the car that's going home. We've already finished school. When Gong Fan heard this, he did not say anything else. Instead, he closed his eyes and rested. Xianxia did not dare to say anything. He curled up in a corner and shivered. How did this guy's personality change so quickly? Oh my god. It seemed that he could not speak ill of Gong Fan while he was Yu Yu's personality. It just so happened that this guy had changed his personality. If Gong Fan heard it, he might not be able to bear the consequences. Fortunately, Xianxia was glad that he did not say anything bad about Gong Fan just now. The change of personality was an extremely short process. Perhaps in the blink of an eye, Gong Fan would replace Yu Yu's personality and take over this body. This process often happened in a very short period of time. Perhaps in the blink of an eye, the personality changed. When they reached home, Xianxia saw Yu Yu and greeted him warmly. However, she realized that the child in her arms had changed a little. He was no longer Yu Yu. Instead, he had become Gong Fan. Xianxia was a little surprised, but she did not reveal it. She was worried that her reaction would be too abrupt and cause Gong Fan to misunderstand and think that she did not welcome his personality. Gong Fan was an extremely sensitive personality. Perhaps it was because of his inferiority complex, uneasiness, and unstable life that caused him to have a repressed state of mind. He had always thought that he was not welcome. Hence, when Yu Yu returned, this sensitive mood escalated. Before going to bed at night, Xianxia told the two children a bedtime story as usual. Before leaving, when Xianxia leaned over to give him a good-night kiss, Gong Fan, who was wrapped in the blanket, finally asked uneasily, "Mommy, will you not love me in the future?" Xianxia was not surprised that he would ask this, but she was surprised by his emotions. She had never felt so disappointed before. Yu Yu was back. From then on, he was no longer the most special one. The love that was supposed to be shared equally with Yue Yao and Xianxia was now shared equally with Yu Yu. He felt that it was unfair, but there was nothing he could do. In fact, he even felt that Yu Yu was doing him a favor by keeping his personality. On one hand, he rejected this charity, but on the other hand, he longed for it. That time in his sleep, he had awakened Yu Yu's personality and even used his will to induce Yu Yu's personality to kill him. However, just as he was about to suffocate, his tears began to flow. He began to feel uneasy, reluctant to part with her. He missed the warmth that Xianxia gave him and the warmth that the Mu family gave him. Even if it was struggling at death's door, even if it had to wag its tail and beg for mercy, it still wanted to occupy a place in this body. He did not need too much warmth. Even if it was just a good-night kiss, it would make him yearn for this world. In the end, he compromised. He compromised to his own greed. It was rare for him to put down his pride and reveal a humility that he had never shown before. "Let me stay, okay?" When Yu Yu heard this, her heart ached as she hugged him. At this point, the two personalities had merged and coexisted. Yu Yu knew that keeping Gong Fan's personality would definitely be a burden to his mental strength. His body was destined to be unable to bear it. Such a burden, when Gong Fan revealed his weak side, should be eliminated in one fell swoop, expelled from his body, and erased. Chapter 40-33. Yu Yu knew that keeping Gong Fan's personality would definitely be a burden to his mental strength. His body was destined to be unable to bear it. When Gong Fan revealed his weak side, he should get rid of such a burden in one fell swoop, expel him from his body, and wipe him out. However, he still could not do it. Hence, Yu Yu and Gong Fan reached a consensus. The two personalities would take turns to appear and could not dominate each other for a long time. However, Gong Fan still felt uneasy. He was afraid that he would become a burden. He was afraid that Xianxia would hate his existence. "Mommy, will you hate me?" Xianxia felt strange when she heard this. Beside her, Xianxia had already fallen asleep. Hence, she lowered her head and asked in a low voice, "Why are you asking such a strange question?" "Because I'm afraid that one day, Mommy will hate me." As Gong Fan said this, he felt a little sad and guilty. He felt that this body did not belong to him, but he was clinging to it and occupying it. He could not bear to disappear and leave. Could it be that Xianxia did not love him at all and was just waiting for Yu Yu to return? Now that Yu Yu was back, Mommy should know about this, right? Then, would she start to dislike him? Gong Fan felt uneasy. This was the only thing that made him feel uneasy. It seemed that nothing else could affect his emotions. Only things related to Xianxia were the things that he cared about the most and could affect his emotions the most. "Mommy, if one day you feel that I'm a hindrance, don't hate me. Tell me that you don't like me and that you prefer Yu Yu. I will leave on my own accord. However, please leave him with his last dignity. Don't chase him away. don't hate him. Other than that, he had no other requests. Xianxia's heart ached when she heard this. She did not know why Gongfan would say such things. She had always known that what this child lacked the most was a sense of security. However, she did not expect him to be so sensitive that he would let his imagination run wild. However, what Gongfan was worried about was also what she was worried about. She was worried that with the two personalities coexisting, Yu would not be able to hold on any longer. However, she did not blame Gongfan. He wasn't the only one who was to blame. How could she blame him? However, she was also in a dilemma. Whether it was Gongfan or Yu, she couldn't bear to part with them. But if she wanted to keep Gongfan's personality for her own selfish reasons, what if Yu couldn't take it? If that happened, she would never be able to forgive herself. However, if he wanted to protect Yu, would he have to chase Gongfan away? Was there no way to satisfy both sides? At least don't be so cruel. Don't overthink it. Why would mommy hate you? Gongfan said uneasily, if there comes a day when I have no choice but to disappear, I will definitely disappear obediently. Whether mommy remembers me or not, loves me or misses me, I will always love mommy the most. This sentence touched her deeply. Xianxia hugged him tenderly and sighed. Don't let your imagination run wild. Mommy won't hate you or not love you. Whether it's you or Yu, both of you are mommy's favorite. Mommy loves you and will always love you. Don't let your imagination run wild, okay? Sleep early. When Gongfan heard this, he fell asleep peacefully. Chapter 40-34. When Gongfan heard this, he felt at ease because of her words. He closed his eyes and fell asleep peacefully. The next morning, Xianxia was the first to wake up. After brushing his teeth and washing his face, he realized that Gongfan had not woken up yet. Then, he realized that Yu was more sleepy than before. He did not know if he should call him Yu or Gongfan. However, he vaguely realized that Yu must still be sleeping, and that the person in this body must be Gongfan. Xianxia pushed open the door and saw that Yu was still sleeping. Hence, she instructed Xianxia to wake him up. Xianxia felt a little wronged. He pouted and said, Mommy, what if he is Gongfan? Gongfan has a terrible temper when he wakes up. He will throw a tantrum at me, but not at you. Why don't you wake him up? When Xianxia heard this, she did not know whether to laugh or cry. Indeed, Gongfan was indeed a little autistic and not easy to get along with. He was special to her, but to others, he was extremely cold. Hence, Xianxia was a little afraid. It was not that he was afraid, but when Gongfan got angry, it was really quite scary. Xianxia walked to the bed and gently pushed Yu. She said gently, Yu, wake up, wake up. Hearing her gentle voice, Yu's thick eyelashes fluttered slightly and he finally opened his dark eyes. His gaze was dazed for a moment. When he saw Xianxia's face, he snuggled into her arms and buried his face in her chest. Like a kitten acting coquettishly, he rubbed against her. Mommy, good morning. Xianxia gave him a morning kiss. When Xianxia saw this, he was a little jealous. He paced around at the side and leaned forward to ask for a kiss. Mommy, I want a morning kiss too. Me too. Okay, I'll give you a morning kiss too. After Xianxia gave Xianxia a kiss, the latter was finally satisfied. After breakfast, the driver sent the two children to school. When they arrived at the classroom, Gongfan sat in his seat. Qinger, who was beside him, immediately greeted him with a smile. Morning, Yu. Gongfan did not react at first. He did not even see that there was someone beside him. When he heard Qinger greeting him, he pretended not to hear it. Qinger felt a little different. However, she also noticed that the Yu today was different from the one yesterday. Indifferent just like before. However, didn't Yu already tell her yesterday that they were good friends? So, she could still talk to him. Was it because they were friends? Could it be because he wasn't feeling well? Thinking of this, Qinger asked with concern, Are you feeling unwell? Why do you look so pale? Gongfan still did not answer. For a moment, Qinger felt a little uneasy. She didn't know why, but she felt that Yu had become like before. She couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Xianxia, who was sitting in the back seat, looked at Gongfan and then at Qinger. He quickly said to Qinger, He's in a bad mood. Don't talk to him. He was being kind. When Qing'er heard this, she nodded silently. However, she felt even more upset. Of course, she didn't know that Yu had dissociative identity disorder. However, she secretly wondered if she had done something wrong to make Yu unhappy. Xiao Yichen saw it all. After class, when Qing'er wasn't around, he secretly tugged at the corner of Gong Fan's shirt. Hey, do you feel that Qing'er likes you? Chapter 40-35. He wasn't stupid or slow to react. He just didn't care about such things. When Xiao Yichen heard this, he quickly pulled him to the side. Although there are a lot of girls in this class who like you, Qing'er has liked you for a long time since she became your deskmate in the 2nd grade. Gong Fan was still indifferent when he heard this. So what? You don't have any feelings for her? Xiao Yichen's face was full of gossip. However, Gong Fan was very unhappy with his question. How old are you? What do you know about feelings? Do you understand? Xiao Yichen shook his head numbly. No girl likes me. Many girls like me. I'm puzzled. I'm so gentle to girls. Why don't any girls like me? Look at you. You're so reclusive and don't talk much. You look so cold and aloof, but there are so many girls who like you. Do girls nowadays like cool boys? Gong Fan smiled and said slowly, at least they like those with good grades. When Xiao Yichen heard this, he smiled awkwardly but politely. Are all children nowadays so snobbish? Comparing grades and family background? Gong Fan sneered. That's why I find it boring. He was still in primary school. But then again, even if he was in high school or university, he wouldn't date. It wasn't that he was cold and didn't like girls. It was because he didn't know when he would disappear. What right did a personality that would disappear at any time have to talk about these things? Just existing in this world had exhausted almost all of his mental and physical strength. Xiao Yichen touched the bridge of his nose. If you don't like her, it's better to make it clear. I feel that Qing'er treats you differently. Speaking of which, girls nowadays are so mature. It's really scary. Gong Fan turned to look at him and said angrily, if she doesn't tell me, how can I reject her? Xiao Yichen was stunned. That's true. He thought for a while and suddenly said, why don't we pass a note? As he spoke, he leaned over to Gong Fan's ear and whispered a few words. Before class started, Qing'er returned to her seat. Gong Fan glanced at her and secretly passed her a piece of paper. Qing'er was a little surprised. When she took the note in her hand, she saw that it was written by Gong Fan. However, the handwriting was slightly different from Yu's. Different personalities even had different handwriting. She was a little surprised. She took a closer look and saw a line of words on the note. Do you like me? Her heart skipped a beat and she almost suffocated. She was stumped by such a straightforward question. Could it be that Yu liked him? Thinking of this, she held the pen, but did not know how to reply. She raised her head again and stole a glance at Gong Fan, only to see him looking at the book. She did not know if he was reading seriously, but he seemed to be in a daze. Gong Fan's results were very good. Usually, even if he did not listen in class, as long as he was called by the teacher, no matter what the question was, he would be able to handle it with ease. In the past, when he was in class, he often slept. At first, the teacher was a little reluctant, so he called him to solve the problem. All the children were waiting to see him embarrass himself. However, they did not expect Gong Fan to walk to the blackboard and use the chalk to solve the question perfectly. Everyone was stunned. Chapter 40-36. There were really geniuses who just glanced at the textbook when school started and didn't need to listen to the class anymore. In addition, the elementary school questions were relatively simple and not difficult. Therefore, even if Xiao Yichen didn't listen in class, the teacher didn't care. Qing'er secretly wrote a line of words and handed it over when the teacher wasn't paying attention. Gong Fan took it and saw Qing'er's reply. Why do you ask? She seemed to be trembling with fear and a little shy. Qing'er was a little restless. She didn't know the meaning of Gong Fan's note. Could it be that Gong Fan liked her too? She liked Gong Fan. This was a secret that almost all the girls in the class knew. Therefore, Qing'er was very isolated. She wasn't isolated because she liked Gong Fan. There were so many girls who liked Gong Fan, so they wouldn't isolate Qing'er. It was just that Qing'er was Gong Fan's deskmate. This made many people jealous. Gong Fan was famous in the school. Many children in the classroom next door would secretly pass by the classroom and pretend to be unintentional to sneak a peek at Gong Fan. Sometimes, during the afternoon break, Gong Fan would rest on the table. Many children would just lie on the window and watch him for the entire afternoon break. Sometimes, the school would organize spring and autumn outings. They would line up according to their seats and the teacher would ask the deskmates to hold hands. Therefore, as Gong Fan's deskmate, Xianxia enjoyed privileges that many people yearned for but couldn't get. For example, she could sit in the same seat as Gong Fan on the bus. When queuing, she could hold Gong Fan's hand. During class, she would sit next to Gong Fan for almost the entire day. She could admire Gong Fan's beauty up close. It was not surprising that she was isolated. Another reason was that Xianxia was the daughter of the dean. Therefore, she also enjoyed many privileges. For example, every semester, the seats would be rearranged. Only Xianxia's seat would always be next to Gong Fan. It was impossible for them to be deskmates for 3 years without special arrangements. Therefore, Xianxia was very isolated. In fact, this seating arrangement was not requested by Xianxia. It was specially arranged by Xianxia's mother, who was the dean. Gong Fan and Xianxia's family background was unknown. The school kept it a secret. Even if it was a parent-teacher meeting, if Xianxia disguised herself, very few parents would be able to recognize her. However, the dean had the right to know. She knew Gong Fan's background, so she specially arranged for her daughter to sit next to him. It was naturally beneficial for the two children have a good relationship. As a result, Xianxia was able to get her wish to sit next to Gong Fan after changing seats almost every semester. Gong Fan's height was constantly increasing, and his seat was slowly leaning towards the back. Xianxia's unshakable height was also sitting at the back with Gong Fan. Such an illogical arrangement naturally made many children's twos. Ants to their age. TTSS. STT. S2s to S. His personality was relatively straightforward. 3 words, I don't like you, left almost no face for her. Teat. T. Teat to T2s. Chapter 4037. He didn't like her. He didn't like her. He said that he didn't like her. Then why did he ask her, do you like him or not? Xianxia couldn't figure it out, but the truth was right in front of her eyes. She couldn't deny it. You didn't like her. This fact almost destroyed her like the end of the world. Xianxia bit her lip hard and covered her face with her textbook. Her tears dripped onto the table. When little Chen, who was behind her, saw this, he stuck his head out to look, but he did not know what was written on the note. He was curious for a moment, and when he saw Xianxia crying so sadly, he became even more curious. Wah! She seemed to be crying very sadly. Gong Fan must have made her cry. This younger brother of his was really terrible. He always made girls cry. Why was he so fierce to girls? He couldn't help but wonder if Gong Fan had written something outrageous on the note. He was still the best. At least, he would never make Lisa cry or upset her. He was the only one who was beaten to tears by her. But then again, what exactly did Gong Fan write that made her so sad? Didn't she ask him to be more tactful? Xianxia stretched his neck, trying to see what was written on the note. Chen. When the teacher called out his name, he was so shocked that he stood up, looking embarrassed. What? Ha ha ha. There was a burst of laughter. Many of them covered their mouths and secretly sized up Xianxia. Xianxia looked around speechlessly and saw others looking at him gloatingly. What are you laughing at? He furrowed his eyebrows and snorted. The teacher asked, What are you doing? I'm not doing anything. Then why are you stretching your neck? When Xianxia heard this, he pretended to be calm. Teacher, this is not an exam. I'm not peeping at other people's answers. Ha 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 ha. Everyone laughed again. The teacher was a little angry. Then can you explain the grammatical difference between the past tense and the present tense? Xianxia was dumbfounded. He didn't understand. He looked at the teacher. The teacher looked at him. They stared at each other. The scene fell silent for a moment. Gong Fan turned back to look at Chen, then turned back silently. Gong Fan, answer this. Gong Fan did not even stand up. He said indifferently, Don't ask me this kind of question. This time, it was the teacher's turn to be embarrassed. He asked somewhat uneasily. What do you mean? Only an idiot wouldn't know such a simple question. The idiot behind him was so angry that his whole body trembled. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. Have you ever seen a younger brother who would tear down his brother's stage? He was. This younger brother of his was too much. After class, Xianxia was still lying on the table. She buried her face in her arms and couldn't be seen clearly. But looking at her shoulders heaving up and down, one could guess that she must be crying. She was crying very hard. However, Gong Fan pretended not to see it and did not even say a word of comfort. If it had been Yu, he would have stepped forward and comforted her like a gentleman. When Xiao Yichen saw this, he couldn't help but feel sorry for her. He gently moved closer to Gong Fan's ear and said uneasily, How long is she going to cry for? Gong Fan didn't say anything. Xiao Yichen expected better from him. Can't you say a few words of comfort? What does it have to do with me? She's crying because of you. Does it have nothing to do with you? Chapter 4038. Then why is she crying so hard? Gong Fan shook his head with an indifferent expression. Xiao Yichen felt helpless too. Even though he sympathized with Xianxia, he didn't know how to comfort a crying girl. Just like that, Xianxia was in a daze for the entire day and had no energy left. That was how Gong Fan went about his business. However, something happened in the afternoon. Look. Where's Xianxia's love letter? Let me see who it's for. During lunch break, a mischievous boy took a book from Xianxia's desk and realized that Xianxia had written a few pages of a love letter. Hence, he took advantage of the fact that Xianxia wasn't in the classroom to announce it. The boy took a look and showed it to everyone, saying, Wow, it's for you. Let me read it out loud for all of you. Hence, the boy read out the contents of the love letter to everyone with great emotion. You, do you know? I've liked you since the first time I saw you. Even though you don't like to talk and ignore me, it doesn't affect my love for you. At first, I was curious about you and didn't understand why you didn't pay attention in class. But no matter what the questions were, they couldn't stump you. I feel like you're Superman. The boy read out the love letter with great emotion. The others crowded around and fought over it from time to time, wanting to see Xianxia's love letter with their own eyes. Just then, Xianxia walked into the classroom with a stack of homework books. She had just returned from the teacher's office. As she was the class representative, she had to go to the teacher's office every afternoon to get her graded homework. She wasn't in a good mood. When she entered the classroom and saw many people crowding around the podium, she didn't pay much attention to it. It wasn't until she heard some familiar phrases when the homework books were distributed that she looked at the podium in surprise. She saw everyone sizing her up with smiles on their faces. Some of them looked at her with ridicule, some snickered, some looked at her with contempt, and some looked at her with disdain. Those piercing gazes seemed to be mocking her for thinking too highly of herself. The boy laughed and said, Xianxia, you're indeed the language class representative. Your writing style is so good. As he spoke, he proudly waved the love letter in his hand and playfully stuck out his tongue. Xianxia shuddered, and her face flushed red with shame and indignation. You stole my notebook. Notebook? Is this a notebook? This boy doesn't get along with Xianxia very well. In the past, during self-study, Xianxia was also a disciplinary committee member. She was a very serious girl and was very serious about rules. However, there were always some naughty children in the class who did not abide by the rules of self-study, including this boy. She had remembered his name more than once, so the boy had always mocked her for being a tattletale and went against her at every turn. Taking advantage of Xianxia's absence, the boy secretly flipped through her desk. Unexpectedly, he found a love letter secretly written to Yu, so he spread the news. Xianxia flew into a rage out of humiliation. Li Sicheng, what are you doing? I didn't expect that as the class committee member and the language class representative, you didn't study hard and wanted to learn how to date like an adult. You even wanted to confess to Yu. Why don't you take a look at yourself? Yu is so outstanding. Would he like you? Chapter 4039. Give it back to me. Xianxia was so angry that her face was livid. She walked over and tried to snatch the notebook from his hand. Give it back to me. Ha! I'm not giving it back. Li Sicheng gripped the notebook tightly in his hand and snorted coldly at her. Who told you to keep complaining and remembering my name? Now I've found out that you're in a relationship. You're a class committee member, Yet you're leading a student in a relationship. What would your mother, the head of teaching, think if word got out? You! Give it back to me! Qing'er was so angry that she cried and screamed. Li Xiqing wanted to tease her. I'm not giving it back. Why don't you come and snatch it from me? Li Xiqing jumped onto the podium and held the notebook high. Qing'er could not reach it no matter how hard she tried. She was not as tall as him to begin with. Now she could not snatch it from him. Do you know you use family background? You're not even pretty enough. Why would anyone take a fancy to you? His father is the chairman of Jianghu Corporation and is worth hundreds of millions. His mother is the popular movie queen Xianxia. Are you worthy of him? What? As soon as Li Xiqing finished speaking, the others exclaimed, Yu Yu's mother is a superstar? If Li Xiqing had not said it, many people would not have known. Yes, my dad said it. My dad once attended a cocktail party held by Jianghu Corporation and saw Yu Yu standing with his parents. Many celebrities attended the party. I saw Hua Jin holding Yu Yu. Wow! Hua Jin! I love Hua Jin so much. Is what you said true? If you don't believe me, come back and ask Yu Yu. Li Xiqing was quite proud. It seemed that he was the only one in the class who knew about Yu Yu's family background. A smug expression appeared on his face. Qing'er was also a little stunned. She did not know about Yu Yu's family background, so she was a little surprised when she heard it. Yu Yu's mother was the superstar Xianxia. Why hadn't Yu Yu mentioned this before? When Qing'er reacted, she immediately realized that now was not the time to think about this. She glared at Li Xiqing, suppressed her anger and said to him, Come down quickly. It's dangerous to stand so high up. What if she fell? Also, this notebook contains my private information. You can't read it. Give the book back to me immediately. Otherwise, what will you do? Are you going to tell your dean's mother? Li Xiqing snorted coldly. What else can you do besides snitching? Also, you don't have to pretend to care about me. Why should I listen to you? Let me tell you, many people in the class don't like you as a class committee member. You're the only one who thinks too highly of yourself. You have no right to order me to do anything. At home, my parents have never ordered me to do anything. What right do you have to be so fierce to me? Qing'er finally cried out of anger. She bit her lip hard and tears fell drop by drop, but she did not know what to do. She squatted on the floor sadly and covered her face as she cried bitterly. For a moment, everyone was stunned. They didn't expect that things would turn out like this. Seeing Qing'er crying, they didn't know what to do for a moment. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen had just entered the classroom when they saw this scene. Xiao Yichen saw Li Xiqing standing on the podium with a notebook in his hand. Qing'er was squatting by the side, crying sadly. He did not know what was going on. Chapter 40. Xiao Yichen frowned and asked, What's going on? It had to be said that Xiao Yichen and Yu Yu had WeChat accounts in class. Their WeChat accounts were even higher than those of any of the teachers. As soon as Xiao Yichen spoke, Li Xiqing immediately replied obediently, Yu Yu, Yichen, you came at the right time. Guess what I found? Xiao Yichen glanced at him and said unhappily, Get down from the podium. Li Xiqing listened to Xiao Yichen's words and jumped down from the podium obediently. He went up to them and presented Qing'er's notebook in front of them as if he was presenting a treasure. Can you guys guess what this is? Gong Fan was not interested. Xiao Yichen looked at Qing'er, who was squatting and crying, and vaguely felt that Li Xiqing was the one who made her cry. What's going on? Why is Qing'er crying? At the side, a boy mustered up his courage and said, Li Xiqing peeked at Qing'er's notebook. There's a love letter written by Qing'er to Yu Yu. Qing'er saw it and was so angry that she cried. Li Xiqing glared at them and said, Do I need you to speak? Gong Fan heard this and frowned. He looked at Qing'er with a complicated expression but did not say anything. However, he did not look too good. Li Xiqing saw that Gong Fan's expression was not good and guessed that he must be angry. However, he was confused. Why was he angry? Li Xiqing had to admit that he was very good at reading people's expressions. Therefore, he could tell that Gong Fan did not look good. He must be angry. However, he did not know why he was angry. However, he restrained himself a lot. Xiao Yichen said expressionlessly, Stop fooling around. Return the notebook to Qing'er. Li Xiqing heard this, and even though he was unwilling, he did not dare to go against Xiao Yichen's wishes. Although Xiao Yichen usually looked carefree, he had a lot of prestige among the boys. Between boys, even if they didn't advocate martial arts, fighting was inevitable. However, ever since Xiao Yichen had started school, he had never lost a battle. Even when he fought with his seniors, he was a heaven-defying existence who could take on 10 people at once. Boys had a mindset of worshipping the strong. Therefore, little Yichen's popularity and prestige among the boys were extremely high. Li Xiqing was even more shrewd. Although he was young, he knew that Xiao Yichen's family was much more powerful than his. Therefore, he knew that he could not afford to offend this child. At such a young age, he had learned to be snobbish from his father, who was a businessman. When Li Xiqing heard Xiao Yichen's words, he didn't continue to make things difficult for Qing'er. He reluctantly walked over and returned the notebook to Qing'er. However, Qing'er did not raise her head. Instead, she covered her face with her hands. She was so sad that she started to cry. After being fooled around by Li Xiqing, she had lost all her face. Children also valued face, especially girls. They were very thin-skinned. After Li Xiqing's nonsense, they could not raise their heads to face their classmates. Li Xiqing felt a little helpless. Qing'er ignored him, and Li Xiqing could not do anything about it. Hence, he turned to look at Xiao Yichen with an embarrassed expression. What should I do? She's ignoring me. What did you do? She's ignoring you. Xiao Yichen said coldly. Did you bully her? Li Xiqing did not speak. As a boy, how could you bully a girl? That's too embarrassing. Xiao Yichen especially disliked boys who bullied girls. Chapter 40-41. Li Xiqing couldn't help but feel a little guilty. He stammered. I didn't bully her. I just felt that it was a novelty, so you showed her the love letter. Xiao Yichen's gaze turned even colder. Li Xiqing didn't say anything else and lowered his head guiltily. Gong Fan suddenly opened his hand and said, Give it to me. Li Xiqing was stunned for a moment. At first, he didn't understand what he meant. It was only when he saw his open palm that he understood that Gong Fan was asking for the notebook. Hence, he obediently handed the notebook over to him. Gong Fan put the notebook back on the table and walked to Qing'er's side. He leaned over slightly and held her arm. Get up, he said quietly. His voice wasn't loud, but it was loud enough for her to hear clearly. However, Qing'er didn't want to get up and face him. Originally, writing a love letter was a more private matter. Now that it was publicized, it was extremely embarrassing. Now that the fact that she liked Yu was an open secret in class, she couldn't face her classmates anymore. Gong Fan saw that she was burying her head in the notebook. He frowned slightly and sighed. Liking someone isn't something to be embarrassed about. The moment he finished speaking, the people around him were stunned and a little surprised. Everyone knew that Gong Fan was speaking up for Qing'er when he said that. When Qing'er heard this, she was a little surprised. She finally lifted her head and looked at him pitifully with a pair of tear-stained eyes. She didn't know what to do. She didn't want this matter to trouble Yu because of her. She felt that it was all because of her that Yu was implicated. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a problem. It's going to be lunch break soon. Don't squat here. It was rare for Gong Fan's voice to be gentler. Go back to your seat. Okay. Qing'er stood up obediently and allowed him to help her back to her seat. At the side, a few girls who were enjoying the show couldn't help but feel a little disappointed when they saw this. They had wanted to watch the show and enjoy Qing'er's embarrassment. Now that Yu had stepped forward to defend her, they didn't feel good about it. He felt that Qing'er had profited from her misfortune. She had received special care from Yu. Their eyes were red with envy and jealousy. Qing'er returned to her seat and continued to lie down, not daring to raise her head. Gong Fan raised his head and said expressionlessly, No one is allowed to mention this matter in the future. Everyone present, just pretend that this matter never happened. Do you understand? Got it. Yes. We will definitely keep it a secret. Everyone must keep this a secret for Qing'er. Everyone pretended to defend Qing'er and nodded their heads. Gong Fan returned to his seat and lay on the table for an afternoon nap. During the afternoon break, Xiao Yichen called Li Xiqing over. Before class started, Li Xiqing followed behind Xiao Yichen and came back dejectedly. He walked over to Qing'er's desk, lowered his head in guilt, and said without rhyme or reason, "Qing'er, I'm sorry." Qing'er looked at him suspiciously. "Just now, Yichen lectured me harshly. I feel that the incident at noon." He lowered his voice so that only he and Qing'er could hear him. "I went overboard with the incident at noon. I apologize to you." Qing'er was a little surprised. "What?" Chapter 40-42. What happened at noon? I went too far. I apologize to you. Qing'er was surprised. What? Li Xiqing, who had always been proud and arrogant, was actually apologizing to her. It was unbelievable. Seeing that Qing'er was stunned, Li Xiqing was also embarrassed. He turned his face away awkwardly and said uneasily, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have joked about such things. I've thought about it seriously. Indeed, there's nothing wrong with liking someone. I made a mountain out of a molehill." Qing'er was completely taken aback. She originally thought that she had heard wrongly. She didn't expect Li Xiqing to apologize again in such a serious manner. This time, Qing'er felt a little embarrassed. She didn't know why, but whenever Xiao Yichen and Yu said something, everyone in the class treated it like an imperial edict. They had said that the incident in the afternoon was not allowed to spread, so it really didn't spread. In fact, everyone who was present seemed to have tacitly agreed that the incident had never happened. Qing'er pursed her lips and muttered, "Actually, it's nothing. I was very angry at that time. Now that you've apologized, I'm not angry anymore." Li Xiqing's eyes lit up when he heard this. "Does this mean that you're willing to forgive me?" "Yes. As long as you don't joke about such things in the future and don't do such dangerous things. Everything will be fine." After a pause, she emphasized, "Oh yes, just pretend that you don't know that I like you." Li Xiqing was surprised when he heard this. At the same time, he felt a little regretful. "Did you take you're not good enough for you seriously?" "That's not what I meant. Actually, you don't have to think too much. There's nothing wrong with liking someone. Yes, but you can't use this as an excuse to make liking someone a problem." Qing'er sniffled and rubbed her red and swollen eyes. She put on a natural and graceful smile and said, "I admit that I like him. But I feel that my liking him will definitely become a problem for him. So, I've always kept it in my heart. I didn't expect everyone to know about it." Li Xiqing felt even more guilty when he heard this and lowered his head. Ever since the children in the class found out that Yu's mother was Xianxia, they were in an uproar. There were often children who ran excitedly to his and Xiao Yichen's desks, rubbing their hands and begging, "Please, does your mommy know the FX youth group? I really like these 4 little brothers. Can you help me get their autographs? It doesn't matter if we don't have 4 people. I really like Hua Jin. I feel that he is very handsome. It would be great if my husband is Hua Jin in the future. I want to take a photo with Hua Jin. Can you help me beg your mommy? If I can have a photo with Hua Jin, I think I can brag about it for a year. Please, please." At night, before dinner, Xiao Yichen leaned against the bar counter thoughtfully and watched as Xianxia busied herself. After frowning for a long time, he finally spoke. "Mommy." "Yes." Xianxia finally looked up and glanced at him. She raised her eyebrows and asked, "What's the matter? Is Uncle Hua Jin very popular now?" "Yes, very popular." "Why?" Chapter 40-43. Xianxia stared at the oven as she said, "Uncle Hua Jin's career is at its peak now." Although his popularity could not be compared to when Gu Xingzi was at his peak, it was not far off. No wonder. So many of his classmates were asking him for autographs and photos. Uncle Hua Jin is really popular these days. Xianxia thought for a moment and said, "Maybe it has something to do with the drama that he's been filming recently. The drama that he filmed last year is called Stargazing. Isn't it one of the top shows in the ratings? I heard that he's been running around so much these past few days." As she said this, Xianxia was suddenly curious. Xiao Yichen usually did not have the time or energy to care about Hua Jin. Why was he suddenly asking about Hua Jin? "Many of my classmates are asking me for autographs." Xianxia was a little surprised when she heard this. "Why are they asking you for autographs?" That's because one of my classmates seems to know that my dearest mommy is a superstar. Perhaps it was an accident, but he spread the news to the rest of the class. Now, everyone knows that you're my mommy, and I know Uncle Hua Jin. Xianxia's lips twitched when she heard this. Was Hua Jin really that popular? He was so popular that he was a primary school student. There are a total of 40 students in the class. Now, almost half of them are asking me for autographs. Should I give them to them? Xianxia thought for a moment and pursed her lips. If it's just an autograph, then it's not a big problem. She felt that being a celebrity was just an ordinary profession. Perhaps it was because of the popularity of the audience that made it so special. Hua Jin was indeed very popular. Almost everyone in the industry concluded that Hua Jin's role as an idol had already been set. Everyone agreed that he probably could only play roles in ancient costumes and could not act in modern idol dramas. However, this year, Hua Jin completely overturned everyone's understanding of him with two teen idol dramas, one Blossoming Half Summer and the other Starry Day. Hua Jin was already in his 20s. Even though he was wearing a school uniform, he didn't feel awkward at all. Especially since Blossoming Half Summer was an idol drama that spanned from the campus to the city's shopping mall. The male lead was played by Hua Jin from his youth to his middle age. There wasn't any sense of awkwardness. It was hard to believe that the #1 actor in costume dramas was actually more popular than costume dramas. A total of 25 autographed photos. Xiao Yichen counted with his fingers and then said to Xianxia, "Mommy, ask Uncle Hua Jin for me." "You can call him yourself. It's not like my classmate asked me for it," Xianxia said. Xiao Yichen opened his mouth and wanted to refute, but he didn't know what to say. All right. He gave in. Sitting in the study room, Xiao Yichen dialed Hua Jin's number. After a long time, the call finally got through. "Hello. Uncle Hua Jin, it's me. Ahem." Xiao Yichen cleared his throat awkwardly. His face was a little red. Hua Jin was a little surprised when he heard Xiao Yichen's voice. Why did you think of calling me?" Can I ask you for a favor?" What is it?" "Can you give me 25 autographed photos?" Hua Jin was stunned when he heard this. Chapter 40-44. Because, when my classmates found out that I knew you, they all asked me to do it. They said that they are your fans. "I see." Hua Jin pondered for a moment. "It's easy to get an autograph, but I won't be free for the next few days. Why don't you wait for me to take a break in a few days and I'll give you an autograph?" "Okay, that's good too." Xiao Yichen was touched. "Thank you, Uncle Hua Jin." Hua Jin was touched. Xiao Yichen and Hua Jin were not close. In fact, Hua Jin liked Xiao Yichen and Yu a lot. However, these two rascals were not close to anyone other than Xianxia. He had been worried that he could not find a chance to suck up to them. Wasn't this a good time to suck up to them? He did not expect that Xiao Yichen would say thank you to him in such a sweet voice. Hua Jin suddenly realized that his chance to suck up to them had finally come. Unfortunately, his schedule was quite full these few days. Hence, Hua Jin promised Xiao Yichen that he would send over the autograph as soon as he was on break. Xiao Yichen was not in a hurry. However, Xiao Yichen's classmates thought that Xiao Yichen had forgotten about the autograph after so many days. Hence, they urged him a few times. Xiao Yichen explained to them that Hua Jin's schedule was too full. He would send over the autograph in a few days when he was free. Hence, they waited patiently for a while. However, after waiting for a long time, some of them started to complain. Is it real or not? Didn't Li Xiqing say that Xiao Yichen's mother is a celebrity? Why does it seem so difficult to get an autograph? Could it be that the autograph is fake? After all, it's weird for him to agree to more than 20 autographed photos at once. Actually, it's normal for celebrities to not know each other. Perhaps Xiao Yichen's mother doesn't have a good relationship with Hua Jin? Wasn't Xiao Yichen's mother Xianxia? I know her. She and Hua Jin acted in a TV series called Lethal Beauty. Have you seen it? Xiao Yichen's mother played a bad woman in the drama. I hated her to death when I was watching the drama. I couldn't wait for her to die. Shoo! You can't let Xiao Yichen hear that. I'm talking about the characters in the TV series. It's not like it's him. Even so, we can't let Xianxia hear about it. He'll get angry. Yeah, it seems like he's always very serious about his family. He won't even joke about it. After waiting for a few more days, Hua Jin went on leave just as most of them were about to forget about it. He had been planning how to give Xianxia and Yu Yu a surprise. In the end, Xianxia and Yu Yu were completely shocked. That afternoon, during a self-study session, someone suddenly screamed, "It's Hua Jin!" Wow! It's really Hua Jin. Soon, the entire classroom was in an uproar. Xianxia, who was already dozing off, was suddenly awakened by an earth-shattering scream. What the hell? Was it an earthquake? Chapter 40-45. There was a crowd of children in the classroom. Hua Jin was looking for Xianxia and Yu Yu through the window. When he finally found them, he smiled and waved at them. Gong Fan turned around with a cold expression and pretended not to see them. Xianxia, on the other hand, was shocked. It was Hua Jin. When he was dozing off just now, he suddenly felt as though there was an earthquake in the classroom. There was a huge commotion and he vaguely heard Hua Jin being at home. He wondered what was going on, but it turned out that Hua Jin was actually here. He came directly to the school in person. Was he crazy? Xianxia had a look of disbelief on his face. Rather than saying that he was shocked, it was more appropriate to say that he was horrified. Was he crazy? Hua Jin, on the other hand, did not seem to be aware of his horror. Instead, he waved the autographed photos in his hand as though they were treasures. He smiled at Xianxia through the window and said, "I brought the autographed photos over." Xianxia held his forehead helplessly. He actually came all the way to the school just to give a few autographed photos. This was simply too crazy. Xianxia stood up helplessly and walked out of the classroom. Hua Jin immediately came up to him and handed him a thick stack of autographed photos. The reason why he said it was a thick stack was because Hua Jin did not give him photos, but handwritten photos. Autographed. Where are the photos that you promised? Hua Jin said proudly, "These are all limited edition photo albums. You can't buy them normally. I hoarded them and prepared them as gifts for my fans. I've offered them to you. Are you still not satisfied?" He talked non-stop. After a pause, Hua Jin lowered his voice and said angrily, "Besides, how shameful would it be to give them photos? Wouldn't they secretly say that you're petty?" Xianxia rolled his eyes. It's already troublesome to help them. Why do they have to ask for this and that? Isn't it fine if it's just a signed photo? Hua Jin shook his head and sighed. Since they're all my little fans, then I'll just treat it as me giving my fans some benefits. Xianxia raised his eyebrows. All right. By the way, how did you get in here? No one stopped you? As he spoke, he suddenly thought of something. Also, you raided my school. What are you trying to do? I have a surprise for you. Haha, there's no joy. Xianxia glanced at him. Our school is heavily guarded and outsiders are not allowed to enter. How did you get in? When Hua Jin heard this, he was a little surprised. Is that so? Actually, I didn't want to come in. I wanted to call you at the school gate and ask my assistant to bring it in. In the end, when I reached the entrance, the security guard recognized me. Then, the principal who was on duty at the school gate welcomed me in. As he spoke, Hua Jin pointed behind him. Xianxia looked in the direction he was pointing at. He saw the purchasing teacher, a few deans from the education department, the vice principal, and the security guard standing behind Hua Jin excitedly. They were all smiling politely. Where was the moral integrity that was promised? Was the disciplinary teacher who was staring at Hua Jin with a smitten smile really the strict teacher who always preached that nothing can be accomplished without rules? Little Chen swallowed his saliva. When Hua Jin saw that Little Chen was staring at a teacher, he immediately said, "This teacher seems to be a fan of mine too. Unfortunately, I only brought so many autographed photo albums with me. I couldn't give her a set, so she asked me for a group photo." Chapter 40-46. Xianxia looked as if she had seen a ghost. She's your fan? It was hard to imagine. The strict discipline teacher in her impression was actually Hua Jin's fan. Recently, Hua Jin's dramas had become very popular. Therefore, many people had become Hua Jin's fans. Hua Jin, Are you here to pick up Xianxia from school? The discipline teacher asked cautiously. Hua Jin nodded. Yes, school should be over soon. I'm waiting to pick up the two of them and go home together. The discipline teacher hummed in acknowledgement and looked at little Chen enviously. She envied Xianxia for being able to interact so intimately with Hua Jin. She even had her idol personally pick her up from school. She wished she could become Xianxia. Even if it was just for a moment, she would be happy. Gong Fan sat in the classroom and yawned. He leaned on the table and ignored what was happening outside the window. It was as if Hua Jin's appearance had nothing to do with him. The children in the classroom were in an uproar. They all got up and ran to the window and door. When the discipline teacher saw this, she immediately stormed into the classroom and said sternly, "Focus on your self-study. Don't look around." Wow, that's too much. We're acting like a die-hard fan in front of Hua Jin. What's wrong with us looking around? Many students lowered their voices and muttered unhappily. After the discipline teacher left, a group of people looked out of the window curiously. Many of the children were amazed by Hua Jin's good looks. Wow, I didn't expect him to be better looking in real life than on TV. Don't many people say that celebrities don't look as good in real life as they do on TV? I think Hua Jin looks really handsome in real life. He's really handsome. Hua Jin was much more handsome in real life than on TV. Although Hua Jin didn't want to admit this, he really didn't look good on camera. In fact, his face looked chubbier in TV. In real life, Hua Jin's beauty was undeniable. Celebrities and ordinary people were really different. Hua Jin stood outside the corridor. Although he was only wearing ordinary clothes and a cap, it could not hide his shining physique. Not long after, Hua Jin and the class teacher walked in. Then, according to the name list that Xianxia had given them, they handed out autographs and photos to the children. The classroom was in an uproar. Round after round of exclamations rose and fell. After school, Hua Jin waited at the classroom door for Xianxia and Yu to pack their bags. He told his assistant to wait outside the school gate, but the assistant was worried that a public figure like him standing in the corridor would cause a commotion and congestion when parents came to the classroom to wait for their children to finish school. Hua Jin, on the other hand, felt that with such a large group of people surrounding him, it would only attract more attention. So, Hua Jin sent his bodyguard and assistant away and waited outside the door alone. Not long after, the parents who came to pick their children up from school also arrived. Just as the assistant was worried, Hua Jin was indeed dressed casually, but it couldn't hide his shining aura at all. However, many people were only suspicious and didn't take it to heart. Still, some people recognized him. Is that Li Ziyu? That's impossible. Why would Li Ziyu come here? Chapter 40-47. That's true. He's a superstar. Why would he come to a primary school? Everyone heard this. That's true. Hence, they didn't take it to heart. Hua Jin stood quietly among the group of parents until Xianxia and Yu walked out of the classroom with Hua Jin. The other children walked out and told their parents in surprise that the person who had been waiting at the classroom entrance was Hua Jin. All the parents were shocked. So it really was Hua Jin. However, a few teachers immediately rushed over and instructed the parents not to spread the news of Hua Jin entering and exiting the school. Otherwise, if the media were to find out about it, they would definitely fabricate reports about it and spread rumors about it. The three of them arrived at the school gate one after another. However, they suddenly saw a raptor parked at the school gate. It was such a big car that it was almost the most eye-catching car at the school gate. Hua Jin glanced over and saw Gong Jia leaning against the raptor. He was so shocked that his eyes widened. Gong Jia. D***it. Why was he here? Xianxia was surprised to see Gong Jia. However, he immediately remembered and said, "Oh, I remember now. Uncle said that he would pick us up from school today." Hua Jin frowned and asked, Didn't the chauffeur pick you up? Something happened at the chauffeur's house today. I heard that his wife had an accident and was hospitalized. He had to take care of her at the hospital. Because it happened so suddenly, he asked Uncle to pick us up." When Hua Jin heard this, he broke out in a cold sweat and immediately said, "Let's pretend that we didn't see him. Let's go." Xianxia's lips twitched when he heard this. He was a little embarrassed and said, "Is that really okay? If Uncle didn't see us, he would be very angry." Gong Fan raised his eyebrows but didn't say anything. Xiao Yichen was a little worried. Uncle can be very scary when he gets angry. Hua Jin was speechless. He pondered for a moment and then said quietly, "How about this? I'll leave first. You can follow him home, okay?" Xiao Yichen was about to nod when he stared blankly behind him with a horrified expression. Hua Jin saw his horrified expression and didn't react at first. He turned around abruptly and almost bumped into Gong Jie's chest. Hua Jin was speechless. He slowly raised his head and saw Gong Jie looking at him condescendingly with a cold smile on his face. Hua Jin was not short. At 1.8 meters, he was considered very tall, but Gong Jie was 8 to 9 centimeters taller than him. Don't underestimate this height. It was enough for Hua Jin to look up to him. Damn it, did he have to be so tall? When Hua Jin saw him, he greeted him awkwardly. "You. What a coincidence. Haha." He laughed awkwardly and rubbed his hands. He was obviously very guilty. His lips curled into a lukewarm smile as he retorted, "Who's the one who wants to leave quietly? Why? Did you see a ghost?" Hua Jin shook his head in horror. "No. No." The corners of Gong Jie's lips curled upward, and the fear in Hua Jin's eyes intensified. Why did he have to stare at him with such a terrifying expression? "Well, I have something to do. I'll leave first." Hua Jin shrunk his neck and was about to escape when Gong Jie raised his hand and grabbed him by the back of his collar. Chapter 40-48. Gong Jie sat in the driver's seat and adjusted the rearview mirror. Hua Jin's pale face was reflected in the mirror. He didn't know why, but he felt as though he had been scared silly and was dumbstruck. Looking at his soulless and empty eyes, Gong Jie suddenly felt like laughing, but he held it back and snorted nonchalantly. Hua Jin shivered again. Gong Jie gave him a meaningful glance and put on his seatbelt as though nothing had happened. Gong Fan sat in the front passenger seat. When he got into the car, he crossed his arms and looked calm. Hua Jin felt as though he was in an ice house filled with despair. Who's going to save him? Hua Jin gulped and asked carefully, "Where are we going?" Gong Jie asked him back expressionlessly, "Where do you want to go?" Hua Jin said weakly, "Actually, I have something to do tonight." "Walking around? Why are you so afraid of me? I'm not going to eat you up." Hua Jin frowned, but he sighed in his heart. How infuriating. He also felt that it was very strange. He didn't know why, but Gong Jie had left a very deep and terrifying impression on him. He felt that he was a super dangerous person. However, Hua Jin also knew that no matter how much Gong Jie disliked him, he wouldn't do anything to him. He wouldn't kill him or eat him up, but his fear of Gong Jie was instinctive. Instinctive fear. Gong Jie said coldly, "I'm not going to eat you up. You don't have to be so afraid of me." He sized up Hua Jin through the rearview mirror, and Hua Jin could also size up Gong Jie through the rearview mirror. Gong Jie didn't know why, but even though he was smiling, he felt as though a layer of ice had formed on his face. He realized that Gong Jie and Gong Fan were indeed uncle and nephew. Regardless of whether he was happy or unhappy, he always acted like he was unapproachable to outsiders. But, even when he was angry, he still looked gentle in front of Xianxia. He couldn't be more envious. In this world, perhaps only Xianxia could enjoy such a privilege. Originally, the atmosphere between Hua Jin and Xiao Yichen was very harmonious. However, ever since they got into Gong Jie's car, both of them were as quiet as chickens. Although Xiao Yichen and the Gong Jie seemed to be getting along well, in reality, Xiao Yichen was also relatively quiet in front of the Gong Jie. He did not dare to speak carelessly, because Gong Jie would scold him. Gong Jie's mouth was also very vicious. He was almost on par with Yu, and he hit the nail on the head. He still remembered that Xiao Yichen had drawn a picture and showed it to Xianxia as though he was presenting a treasure. Gong Jie happened to be beside them, and he quietly said, "Is this a scribble?" Xiao Yichen's entire being withered. How could they bully him like this? Moreover, the uncle and nephew were ganging up to bully him. Gong Jie even said that Xiao Yichen's genes must have mutated. Otherwise, how could you be so stupid when Xiao Yichen was so smart? However, fortunately, Mu Yaja was on Xiao Yichen's side. He casually said, "Why don't you say that Yu's genes have mutated? His IQ is already considered heaven-defying for a child his age." Although this sentence didn't carry much weight. But, at least he had his daddy's support. It could be said that the family was divided into two factions. Mu Yaja and Xiaoyi Chen, Hua Jin, Yu Yu and Gong Jie. Yun Shishir was in the middle. At that moment, they happened to pass by the intersection of the street. Chapter 40-49. Gong Jie immediately stopped the car and instructed Xiaoyi Chen, "Sit here obediently. Uncle will buy it for you." After a pause, he glanced at Gong Fan. "Do you want some?" Gong Fan's face was full of disdain. "No." "Then what do you want to drink?" "Wolfberry tea." Gong Jie mocked. "Are you a Buddhist primary school student? You're so young and you're already so concerned about your health." "I don't like things that are too sweet." Hua Jin muttered curiously. "That can't be. Doesn't Yu Yu like sweet things?" In the past, Yu Yu especially liked to drink cola. Other than cola, she also loved other sweets. However, Gong Fan was different. He only drank cola and politely declined other sweets. Gong Jie looked at Hua Jin again. "What about you? Are you treating me to a drink?" Gong Jie raised his eyebrows and was a little displeased. "What else? You? No. There are too many people." Gong Jie didn't say anything and only instructed him to take care of the two children. The car door closed with a bang, leaving Hua Jin and Xiaoyi Chen looking at each other. Gong Fan said, "Why does it feel like a husband asking his wife to take care of the children?" When Hua Jin heard this, his face turned red with anger. "Hey, don't spout nonsense." Gong Fan said, "I'm just spouting nonsense. Why are you so agitated?" Hua Jin was speechless. When Xiaoyi Chen heard this, he held back his laughter the entire time. His shoulders shook as he secretly laughed. After hearing what Gong Fan said, he also realized that it was true. From the looks of it, his uncle was really like a husband who went out to work, and Hua Jin was like a stay-at-home wife who stayed at home to take care of the children. When he thought about it, it really did look like it. Xiaoyi Chen covered his mouth and snickered. Hua Jin complained, "What are you laughing at?" Now that he says it like that, it's quite vivid. Little Yi Chen put on a serious face. "Seriously speaking, have you considered my uncle's offer? He's so handsome and rich. If you follow him, you can be at ease and be the Gong Madam." Hua Jin looked at him with disdain. "Are you trying to sell me out?" "I'm betraying my uncle." "Speak of the devil." When Gong Jie returned with the milk tea and opened the car door, Xiaoyi Chen was stunned. "Uncle, how are you so fast?" This was the entrance of the bustling city, a street full of delicacies. Usually at this time, there would be a long queue in front of the milk tea shop. It had only been a few minutes, and he had already bought it back. Gong Jie frowned. "Is that so?" "I said I was in a hurry," and the group moved aside. Xiaoyi Chen couldn't help but feel suspicious. "Did you threaten them?" "No," Gong Fan said coldly. Even if he didn't threaten them, just a glance was enough to scare them out of their wits. Gong Jie passed the goji berry tea to Yu Yu and the pudding milk tea to Xiaoyi Chen. When Hua Jin took the remaining cup, he was surprised to find that it was his favorite matcha flavor. He didn't tell Gong Jie that he liked the matcha flavor. Instead, he said it was up to him. Gong Jie also bought it casually. "What's wrong? You don't like this flavor?" Hua Jin was stunned and immediately replied, "No, I like this flavor." "Did you buy it casually?" Gong Jie was taken aback as well, and his brows furrowed slightly. At the side, Gong Fan interrupted, "Uncle also loves matcha flavor the most." Hua Jin was surprised. "You like the matcha flavor too?" "Yes." Chapter 40-50. Hugging the matcha milk cap, Hua Jin sucked a mouthful of the milk through the straw, feeling completely satisfied. Gong Fan took a sip of wolfberry tea and frowned. He put it aside and stopped drinking. Gong Jie was surprised to see this. "What's wrong?" "There seems to be a lot of saccharin." After a pause, Gong Fan said, "It's too sweet." Gong Jie was surprised when he heard this. His gaze became more complicated. "I recently took over a patient with multiple personality disorder." Gong Jie sat on the sofa while Alice sat opposite him. She poured tea for him and said calmly, "This patient has a total of 6 personalities and each of them is independent. Have you started to study this field? If it weren't for your dear nephew, I wouldn't have taken over this patient." Alice sat down and let out a heavy sigh. In the world, there aren't many patients with multiple personality disorder. The proportion of people with dual personality disorder is also very small. However, most of the more complicated conditions are handled by authoritative research institutions. In short, they are test subjects. These patients have been tortured by multiple personality disorder for a long time and have been controlled. Generally, the root cause of multiple personality disorder is because of self-identity disorder. They lose their sense of self-unity and split into two or more different personalities. When one personality appears, the other personalities will automatically withdraw. Generally speaking, the main personality has the advantage. As far as I know, the one with the most classifications in the world is Billy Milliken. Billy? Yes, his story was even filmed into a movie. Back then, he committed the crime of rape in Ohio State University. However, he was diagnosed with a rare case of multiple personality disorder because he was acquitted. Gong Jie nodded. I've heard of this person. This person was the only felon in the history of Country M who was exempted from punishment because of multiple personality disorder. After he committed the crime and was arrested, he didn't know what kind of crime he had committed. He underwent a psychological evaluation and was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Alice took a sip of tea and continued. After he was exempted from punishment, he began to undergo a long period of treatment. 2 doctors discovered that he had a total of 24 personalities. However, through treatment, the doctor found that these personality splits are inseparable from his childhood. What do you mean? Billy's mother, Dorothy, grew up on a farm in Ohio. When she grew up, she lived with her husband, Dick. After they divorced, Dorothy moved to Miami and became a singer. There, she lived with a married comedian named Morrison. Dorothy and Morrison had 3 children. Their second son, William, was Billy. After that, a few years later, Morrison died of suicide. Previously, because of gambling debts and alcoholism, he had also committed suicide. After that, Dorothy left Miami with the child and returned to Ohio. Dorothy met Carmo. This man, Carmo, is the key to Billy's schizophrenia. Chapter 4051. Carmo had 2 daughters, one of whom was the same age as Billy. After Dorothy and Carmo got married, Carmo abused Billy for a long time, including raping him. Before that, because of his father's suicide and his mother's multiple remarriages, Billy already had multiple dissociative personalities. His first split personality was a little girl, Christine, when she was 3 years old. Alice had carefully studied Billy's 24 personalities. Among them, the core personality was Billy. He was 26 years old and had brown hair. The second personality, Arthur, was 22 years old and was British. He was rational and cold. He studied physics, chemistry, and medicine by himself. He could even speak Arabic fluently. He was stubborn and conservative and thought of himself as a capitalist. He was the first person to discover the existence of the other personalities. He was in charge of management and decided who would appear to represent the family. He wore glasses. He could speak Arabic? Yes. Gong Jie was baffled by her words. How could different personalities even have different nationalities? Humans were really mysterious creatures. Gong Jie did not know that there were multiple personalities in the past. So far, many strange incidents have been discovered. Some people, who were originally masochistic when they woke up, started to speak authentic Spanish for no reason. After diagnosis, they were also split personalities. Gong Jie finally understood what was going on. In other words, these personalities are all independent entities. The world where personalities exist is unimaginable to us ordinary people. The information we have is also from the oral accounts of the patients. For example, Billy had a split personality when he was 3 years old. When he was 3 years old, he was often called to a corner by the teacher to develop. She was an English little girl. She was smart but suffered from dyslexia. She liked to draw flowers and butterflies. She had blonde hair and blue eyes. These personalities were also oral accounts of the patients? Alice said, "This is the most special thing about Billy. The 24 personalities all liked to draw. These portraits were all drawn by Billy." Gong Jie still felt that it was a little unbelievable. Among so many personalities, there was a personality called Philip. He was 20 years old and had a rough personality. He was from New York and had a strong Brooklyn accent. There was also a personality called Kevin. He was 20 years old and good at scheming. He once planned the robbery of Gray's pharmacy. He liked to write and had blonde hair. In other words, Gong Jie concluded. These 24 personalities were all different. Some were little girls, some were rough men, and some were gentle writers. The 24 personalities each had their own roles and played different roles. However, the outside world could not tell. Only Billy himself knew. Yes. Will there be hallucinations? Alice stared into his eyes carefully and said slowly, how scary is it when dual personalities and multiple personalities act up? Let's make an analogy and hypothesis. When you are driving, you suddenly realize that you can't remember what happened on the way, or part of it. When you listen to someone talk, you suddenly realize that you can't hear a part or all of what he said. Persistent, severe headache, especially after the above two conditions appear. I found myself somewhere, but I don't know how I got here. Chapter 4052. Persistent, severe headaches, especially after the above two conditions appear. You realize that you are somewhere, but you don't know how you got here. You realize that you are wearing unfamiliar clothes, but you don't know how you put them on. Sometimes, you feel that the people, objects, or the world around you are not real. You feel as if you are standing next to yourself and watching yourself do something, or you are watching yourself as if you are observing another person. You face the mirror, but you realize that the person in the mirror is not looking at you, or you don't know yourself. You feel that you are in a familiar place, but you realize that you are very unfamiliar or unfamiliar with it. You are so focused on a fantasy or daydream that you feel as if it is really happening to you. When you are alone, you talk to yourself loudly. You realize that you can't remember if you have done something before. Sometimes, you realize that you are observing the world through a layer of fog. People and objects are very far away from you, and you can't see them clearly. Alice rattled off one item after another. Every one of them was enough to make Gong Jie tremble in fear. Multiple personality disorder was such a terrifying world. Gong Jie's expression could not help but become a little solemn. Is it very difficult to treat? It's very difficult, but it's not impossible. Alice continued, more than 10 years ago, there was a patient with multiple personality disorder in Lima. This patient had a total of 10 personalities, and 3 of them were very brutal and very disobedient. Therefore, the hospital prepared a very cruel electric shock treatment for this disobedient patient. Electric shock. Gong Jie was shocked when he heard that. Isn't that? It's very painful. Alice faced him. In Lima, Billy also received such painful treatment. After the electric shock, Billy was locked up in the most heavily guarded Ward 9. Most of the personalities gave up hope of living and focused on entering the land of death. The land of death. Yes. Once they enter the land of death, these personalities will be cruelly killed, which means that they will sleep forever. However, it is not ruled out that they will wake up again. However, among the 24 personalities, a teacher appeared and took over the body. He was the sum of the 23 personalities, and he had the memories and abilities of all of them. He was unwilling to bow his head to Lima and refused to admit defeat with his death. He wanted to resist and announce Lima's tyranny to the world. He wanted to completely destroy this hell. After that, this personality used his brilliant acting skills and communication skills to convince Lima that he had become obedient enough. Hence, he was transferred from the strictest room, room 9, to the most relaxed room, room 6. Among them, one of the personas wanted to kill the doctor who took over him, but he was stopped by the teacher. This persona of the teacher was the cleverest of the personas. He started to collect evidence of the hospital's illegal activities. Without a pen and paper, he pulled out a cotton ball from inside his blanket. He wet it and started to write under the bed. He stole his wardmate's tape recorder and stuck it into the toilet vent to record the contents of the medical team's meeting. With the evidence of overdose, he threatened to give him a pen, paper, and visitation rights immediately. This personality is really smart. Yes. Chapter 4053. When Gong Jie heard this, he seemed to be deep in thought. Alice changed the topic. I don't have many chances to come into contact with patients like Billy. After all, there are so many patients with multiple personalities. It's really rare. But recently, I got an opportunity to take over a patient. What kind of patient is she? An 18-year-old girl named Lucy. Lucy? She's an Englishwoman who grew up in New York. I've been treating her for 2 months. Then, I found out that her split personality is also related to her childhood. When Gong Jie heard this, he kept quiet and listened carefully to Alice's analysis. 3 years ago, she was sentenced to 80 years in prison because she killed 3 students. However, after the diagnosis, the lawyer overturned the conviction on the grounds that she was suffering from schizophrenia. But, the legal procedures are very strict. Now, the lawyer is still defending her innocence. When Alice talked about Lucy, she seemed to be interested. Actually, putting aside her unfortunate experience, I feel that she's the strangest patient I've ever taken over. To me, taking over such a patient makes me want to find out more. What kind of patient is she? Alice came up with a rough draft in her mind and said tirelessly. When Lucy was young, her mother went through 2 marriages. After that, she married a man who was 3 years older than her. She married him with Lucy. From then on, for 10 years, until she was 15 years old, this man had been abusing Lucy for a long period of time. He even sexually assaulted her. The crime she committed was that she murdered 3 seniors from the same school. After killing them one by one, she threw their bodies into the sea. When the case was in an endless loop, she suddenly turned herself in and said that she had murdered the 3 boys. However, when she turned herself in, she also accused the 3 boys of sexually assaulting her twin sister. However, after the police investigated and collected evidence, they found that her accusation was completely false. After checking her from all aspects and collecting evidence, there was no evidence to prove that the 3 boys had done anything to her twin sister. She had 2 cousins in total, and one of them said that such a thing had never happened. However, Lucy said that the 3 boys had violated her twin sister. But, in fact, she did not have a twin sister. Even so, she still insisted on what she said. Later, during the trial, her defense lawyer requested for a psychiatric evaluation. According to the procedure, after the evaluation, they found that she had multiple personalities. Chapter 4054. Later on, her childhood sweetheart, the detective, saw through this and persuaded her to turn herself in. But later on, she found out that these people did not exist at all. They were all her split personalities. These 3 boys did not do anything to her. However, not long after, a girl from the same school stood up and testified that she was the real victim of these 3 boys. At that time, Lucy was also at the scene. She probably saw this scene with her own eyes and it triggered the unbearable memories of her youth, which evolved into the final situation. In other words, these were all her fantasies. And during the unbearable torture of her youth, she kept splitting up those personalities. That twin sister was just her unfortunate reflection. She wanted to get rid of the unbearable trauma of her youth, so she wanted to forget all the pain and torture. But the more she tried to forget, the more depressed she felt. So gradually, she split up a second personality to bear these painful memories. The more Alice said, the more uneasy Gong Jie felt. He had a feeling that Lucy's situation was inexplicably similar to Yu Yu's. When I hypnotized Yu Yu back then, I entered his memory and dug out a lot of painful memories from his memory. Presumably, Gong Fan's personality was Yu Yu's split personality to bear the pain and unbearable memories. Gong Jie muttered to himself in shock. Gong Fan was actually Yu Yu's split personality. Yes. So, Yu Yu felt a lot of guilt towards Gong Fan. Because this personality was created by him to bear the pain. So, Gong Jie followed his words and said, so, Yu Yu was unwilling to destroy him. Yes, Yu Yu is very kind, really kind. After a pause, Alice continued, so I've been thinking of a way. Yes. I once thought of creating a society with a personality to maintain order. Would this solve the problem? Gong Jie was a little worried when he heard this. You mean you want to create a 3rd personality or a 4th personality? Yes. No. Gong Jie's attitude was firm. If that's the case, a person's spirit won't be able to withstand it. Create more personalities to form a society of personalities? No, I won't agree. Alice's methods always frightened him. Indeed, this personality society was as shocking as the Sky Eye plan that Yu Yu had proposed. Do you think I'd use Yu Yu as a test subject? Alice laughed it off. No, I won't. I'm going to treat that girl now. If there are no accidents, I'll manage her personality and create a personality society. If this treatment plan works, maybe I can consider it. Gong Jie neither nodded nor denied. He just remained silent. He also wanted to take a gamble. That girl became your test subject? He's not a test subject. Alice shook her head and said, Do you know why she's in my hands? Why? Because everyone is at their wits' end. Chapter 40-55. Speaking of electroconvulsive therapy, Gong Jie was a little curious and asked tentatively, What exactly is electroconvulsive therapy? Alice furrowed her brows and continued, Do you know why personalities exist? Why? Isn't it because the main personality created them? Alice nodded and said, Then do you know why it's so easy to create personalities but so difficult to eliminate them? I don't know. It's because there's almost no difference between the main personality and the secondary personality. Every personality can be seen as an independent entity. Then, since they're no different from ordinary people, and ordinary people don't want to die, why would a personality be willing to be destroyed so easily? Once they exist, once they're created, they'll be like ordinary people. They'll have 7 emotions and 6 desires, independent thoughts and selfishness, and even ambition. Then, gradually, these personalities will want to occupy the main personality. Therefore, it'll cause a lot of mental stress. Back then, Yu's main personality collapsed because of the intense conflict between the 2 personalities. So, Gong Jie sorted out some ideas. That's why it'll cause a lot of mental stress. That's right. Gong Jie gradually understood. In the past, he didn't understand what it was like to have multiple personalities. But after listening to Alice's explanation, he gradually gained a deeper understanding. But do you know why some people choose to commit suicide? Are they normal people? Yes. Because of pain. Alice's tone suddenly became heavier. Because of the indelible pain, whether it's mental or physical, there really is such a pain that makes people want to die. Gong Jie suddenly understood. Electroconvulsive therapy is to let these personalities experience the pain of being born as a human, so they choose to destroy themselves? Yes, bingo. Alice snapped her fingers and her eyes revealed a look of amazement. You seem to have a lot of potential. I don't want to have such a cruel potential. Gong Jie understood. Using electroconvulsive therapy to let each personality experience the pain of being born as a human, then these personalities would start to get tired of the feeling of being a human body. Then they would choose to go to the land of death. However, the main personality will also suffer this terrible pain. Alice stared deeply into his eyes. Although this pain is also borne by the main personality, no matter how painful it is, it's not fatal. And you also know that the main personality will never die. The ones who die will only be the other personalities. Gong Jie suddenly felt a bone-chilling coldness. Why would they think of such a cruel treatment? Because they're at their wits' end. Alice sighed again. So, in this world there are too many unknowns. The only people who truly understand the world of schizophrenia and multiple personality disorder are probably only themselves. The reason why the current medical industry had so much amazing information in this field was because most of it came from the oral accounts of these patients. We have no way of telling whether what they say is true or false. Everything in their world is foreign and unknown to us. Chapter 40-56. After a long silence, Alice sighed from the bottom of her heart. I even want to create a second personality in order to cure Yu. At least, I can really explore his world and find the right medicine. Gong Jie was shocked when he heard this. Are you crazy? He had never heard of a doctor deliberately creating a second personality in order to treat a patient with schizophrenia. Is it strange? Aren't scientists all unreasonable lunatics? Gong Jie looked at her strangely. He had always known that Alice was a lunatic. She was a crazy woman. To ordinary people, she might be judged as a cruel woman. When she was sleepy during an autopsy, she would freely drink a bottle of red wine. In the middle of the night, she would study corpses in the morgue. The extent of her obsession with medicine was incomprehensible to ordinary people. In order to cure Yu, she did not hesitate to sacrifice herself? What a joke. Gong Jie said, You're really crazy. Alice, however, did not think much of it. Many professors who have created epic achievements have created so many medical miracles through countless experiments. Some experiments can be replaced by white mice. Some can be replaced by the voluntary donation of the deceased. However, under other circumstances, most scientists will sacrifice themselves and use themselves as experimental subjects. During the war, Many experiments were conducted. Although it was cruel, it also contributed a lot of information to human medicine. That's because some diseases can't be cured without several experiments. So, Gong Jie narrowed his eyes. How do you create dual personality? You have to know that not everyone can have dual personality and multiple personality disorder. Dual personality and multiple personality disorder are not ordinary people. However, before they created these personalities, they were actually ordinary people, right? Gong Jie did not want to listen to her fallacious reasoning. Shut up. No matter what, don't mention this matter again in the future. Alice stared deeply into his eyes and sighed helplessly. Then I really don't know what to do. Gong Jie did not say anything else. Uncle, what are you thinking about? At the dining table, Xianxia snapped his fingers when he saw that Gong Jie was in a daze. Gong Jie finally reacted. His eyes regained focus, and his ink-like pupils calmed down. Nothing, I was just daydreaming. On the way back to school from picking up Gong Fan and Xianxia, he suddenly recalled the things that Alice had mentioned to him at the headquarters. His thoughts were heavy all the way. Just like what Alice said, dual personality was really a terrible thing. Yu loved desserts so much, but when it came to Gong Fan, he politely declined all desserts. It was magical, but he also felt heartache. It felt close, but it also felt strange. Now, other than Yu and Gong Fan, everyone had fallen into a vicious cycle. That was, he hoped that Yu's dual personality would be cured and that Gong Fan's second personality would be preserved. Everyone hoped that Yu would be well, but no one wanted Gong Fan to leave. It was really a thorny problem. Gong Jie propped his chin on his hand and gently took a sip of the red wine. Xianxia, who was beside him, sized him up silently. She, too, knew what was bothering him. It was probably because of Yu. Chapter 40-57. It must be because of Yu. However, Gong Jie did not take the initiative to mention it to her, so it was probably not very optimistic. Xianxia did not ask. Although she had been worried about Yu and Gong Fan, it was useless to worry blindly. She might as well let nature take its course and cherish the time she spent with Yu and Gong Fan. Xiao Jie, don't let your imagination run wild. Eat a piece of steak. Gong Jie came back to his senses and hummed in acknowledgement. Who cooked this steak? Me. Gong Jie seemed to have discovered a new world. You know how to cook steak? Of course. Xianxia rolled her eyes. I should learn how to cook. Yu seems to have disappeared for 2 days. Gong Jie asked again, where's Gong Fan? Xianxia said, he's finished eating. He's in the study. Gong Jie suddenly recalled Alice's words. Actually, I've been thinking about how to coexist with 2 personalities. Do you know? If Gong Fan leaves Yu's body, he will definitely take away all those dark memories. However, the uneasiness and guilt will forever remain in Yu's heart. He has always felt that he owed Yu. His disappearance will cause Yu to completely break down. Was that really the case? Gong Jie felt inexplicably frustrated. In the study, Gong Fan lay on the table and slept for a short while. When he opened his eyes again, they had regained their clarity. Yu raised his head and looked around. Just as he was about to get up, he suddenly noticed a blue notebook beside him. He raised his eyebrows inexplicably and looked around again. Seeing that he was alone in the study, he opened the notebook thoughtfully. When he woke up, he did not know where he was or what he should do. His memories seemed to have stopped 2 days ago. He knew nothing about what had happened to Gong Fan in the past 2 days. It was precisely because of this predicament that he was at a loss. He flipped open the notebook and saw that it was completely different from his, but he recognized Gong Fan's handwriting at a glance. It was written in red pen, clear and dazzling. In the future, we will use this method to contact each other. Yu swept a glance at it, and his pink lips curled up slightly. He understood everything at a glance. It looked like a notepad, but it was more detailed than a notepad. February 1st, at night, lying in bed, I suddenly felt very uneasy. I felt like I was a burden, so I told Mommy about my uneasiness. She gave me a kiss and told me that I was an inseparable part of her. I was very happy. Although the words seemed cold, Yu could feel Gong Fan's suppressed joy from the words. February 2nd, today, Qinger seems to be more enthusiastic towards me than before. Is it because of your appearance? However, I'm not good at talking to girls. She probably thinks that I'm a little lonely and disappointed. In the afternoon, Li Xiqing published the love letter she wrote to you to the other classmates and made her cry. How troublesome. I don't know how to deal with such things. In the future, don't create such trouble for me. The wolfberry tea Gong Jie bought is too sweet. It tastes terrible. Xiao Yichen thought that you were back, so he said bad things about me. Idiot. I feel inexplicably anxious and sleepy. I want to sleep, but I'm afraid that if I fall asleep, the one who wakes up won't be me. However, it's okay. At least there's still a place for me. Chapter 4058. Do you like to drink cola and milk tea? It's too troublesome. It's not good to eat too sweet. The more Yu read these words, the more he laughed. Gong Fan had such an adorable side to him. Could they communicate through the notepad? That was quite convenient. Why hadn't he thought of such a method before? Yu stretched lazily when the door suddenly opened. Little Yi Chen poked his head in. When Yu saw that it was him, he suddenly thought of a naughty idea. His lips curled up wickedly as he pretended to be solemn, just like Gong Fan's aloof look. What's wrong? He imitated Gong Fan's cold tone. Sure enough, Little Yi Chen believed him. He walked in with trepidation, cleared his throat and said gently, "It's getting late, it's time to sleep." "Have you made your bed?" "Yes, it's done." Little Yi Chen's eyes darted around. "I just finished showering, and I'm already fragrant." Yu stood up slowly and walked in front of Xiao Yichen. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Let me smell you." Xiao Yichen immediately stood up straight and opened his arms for him to smell. Yu had a serious obsession with cleanliness. Sometimes, when Xiao Yichen came home from school and finished his homework, he would let himself loose. He would either pester Gong Jia, Hua Jin, or Lisa to play tennis. When he came home at night, he would be drenched in sweat. Gong Fan and Yu were obsessed with cleanliness and despised him. Hence, they would urge him to take a shower every night and watch him apply body lotion before entering the room. As a result, Little Yi Chen gradually developed the habit of bathing and showering every day. He even had the habit of applying body lotion after showering. He wasn't so particular in the past. It was all because of his younger brother. Xiao Yichen sized up Yu and felt that he was very obedient. Although they were the same person, they were still two separate personalities. No matter how they acted, they wouldn't look alike. He could not help but mutter strangely, "Are you really Gong Fan?" Yu found it funny, but she held it in. "Who do you think I am?" "I think you look like Yu." Xiao Yichen tapped his head, feeling a headache coming on. Yu and Gong Fan could not tell the difference. Sometimes, Gong Fan suddenly changed back. If he accidentally said something bad about Gong Fan, that would be terrible. You found out. Yu couldn't be bothered to hide it. He didn't know why, but as long as he was in front of Gong Fan, Xiao Yichen would become unusually nervous. He couldn't bear to tease him. When Xiao Yichen heard this, he suddenly realized what was going on. "You're Yu." "Yes." "You tricked me." Xiao Yichen complained pitifully. "How could you do that?" Yu laughed and patted his head. "All right, I won't tease you anymore. Don't be angry." Xiao Yichen crossed his arms in front of his chest, looking proud. He looked like he wanted to be comforted and hugged. Yu quickly reached out and hugged him. "All right, brother, be good. Don't be angry." Xiao Yichen was satisfied when he heard this. He grunted. "Don't do it again." "Okay, I know." "Oh yes, something happened this afternoon." Xiao Yichen was about to tell him about Qing'er when Yu immediately reacted. "Are you talking about Qing'er?" Xiao Yichen looked as if he had seen a ghost. "How did you know?" He was instantly alarmed. Yu couldn't have known. Could it be that he was Gong Fan? Chapter 4059. All right, stop making wild guesses and don't bother about how I found out. Anyway, I'm clear about this matter. The way he communicated with Gong Fan was a secret. Even if it was Mommy, he wouldn't tell her. This was a secret that only belonged to them. "Is Uncle around?" "Yes. He's on the balcony on the second floor." "What's the matter?" Yu said. "You can go back to your room first. I have some matters to discuss with him." With that, Yu walked up to the second floor. When he reached the second floor, he bumped into Gong Jie, who was about to go downstairs. When Gong Jie saw him, he sized him up for a while until he could tell that he was Yu and not Yu. Then he tried to greet him. Yu? Yes. Yu's eyes turned into crescents. Uncle is very smart to recognize me. He won't smile like you. Gong Jie paused and immediately corrected him. He doesn't like to smile much. Is that so? Gong Jie nodded. Actually, it was very easy to distinguish between the two personalities. Gong Fan's personality was cold and indifferent, and it emanated from his bones. On the other hand, Yu's warmth, even if it was just a look, could make people feel very warm from the bottom of their hearts. This kind of feeling couldn't be changed at all. It was just that in the past, he didn't realize it. He just found it strange. How could a child be so smart? He pretended to be so obedient in front of Xianxia, but in fact, he was a terrifying child. He was very shrewd, but in front of her, he acted so innocent. It was just that back then, he didn't expect that Yu had a split personality. If he had noticed this, he would have handed Yu over to Alice immediately. It wouldn't have been delayed until now. Are you looking for me? Yes. Gong Jie was a little curious. Why are you looking for me? Gong Fan wants me to tell you that no matter what you buy for him next time, it has to be sweet. He doesn't like it if it's too sweet. That's all? Gong Jie broke out in cold sweat. Of course not. Yu walked to the railing of the balcony and leaned against it lazily. She enjoyed the night breeze and gently closed her eyes. Gong Jie walked behind him and looked at his back. After a while, he came to his side and leaned against the fence with him. Uncle and nephew, just like that, faced the night breeze. The wind at night was a little cold. Coupled with the drop in temperature at night, it occasionally became a little sharp. Gong Jie felt a little cold, so she asked, "Aren't you cold?" Yu shook her head and narrowed her eyes. She seemed to be enjoying herself. Gong Jie complained, "Did you run up here just to drag me along with you in the cold wind?" There are many things that I want to tell you, but when I close my eyes, I suddenly forget them. You're not that old yet. How did your memory become so bad? Yes, maybe I'm old. When Gong Jie heard this, he was dealt a huge blow. If you're old, then won't I be ascending? Isn't it good to be exposed to the cold wind? You'll be more awake when it's cold. Gong Jie didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's already so late. It's time to sleep, but you're telling me that you want to be more awake? I don't want to sleep. Yu was actually very sleepy, but he didn't want to waste any time on sleep. He wanted to be more awake. Even if he had to lean against the balcony to enjoy the cold wind and look at the night sky, it was better than closing his eyes. Chapter 40-60. What kind of unorthodox saying is that? Yu smiled. Someone else said it. Gong Jie disagreed. Then have you heard of this saying? Go ahead. Gong Jie said, you can only live longer if you sleep early. You can easily die if you sleep late. Yu nodded. This saying is very pertinent and also very scientific. Gong Jie turned around and leaned against the fence. Suddenly he asked seriously, can Gong Fan hear what I'm saying now? He can't. In other words, no matter what I say to you, he won't hear it. Yu nodded. Of course. It's very strange. How is it strange? Gong Jie narrowed his eyes. He couldn't tell. In the past, you had dual personality, but the difference wasn't so obvious. Yu was stunned for a moment and quickly understood what he meant. In the past, his personality was controlled by me. Rather than saying that I controlled it, it was because I didn't realize his existence at all. When he appeared, I still had a vague memory. I also vaguely knew what he did and said. I was just curious why I couldn't control myself, but I didn't know what was wrong with me. I only knew that sometimes, I often couldn't control myself to do some things and say some things. I also know about that world-shaking, Heaven's Eye project. Gong Jie nodded. Then why couldn't you control yourself in the end? Yu continued. Alice hypnotized me. She entered my hypnotic world and discovered my second personality. Actually, erasing my memory was just hypnotizing my first personality and sealing it. From then on, my second personality was completely out of control. I also tried to suppress it. However, it gradually got out of control. Gong Jie was silent for a moment. Suddenly, he asked with a serious expression, "Actually, there is a treatment plan. Gong Fan is willing to sleep and go to the land of the dead." "Are you willing too?" "I'm not willing." Yu interrupted him. Although it was an understatement, one could vaguely see that he was trembling. Gong Jie couldn't bear to see him like this. "Actually, I used to hate him very much. However, later on, I realized that I was the one who created his birth. I forced all the memories related to pain onto him. Only then could I be at ease. He, on the other hand, has always been shouldering so much. He is also a part of me. Why do I have to destroy him?" Gong Jie was still silent. Yu sized him up, and the light in his eyes dimmed. "I know you're worried about me. Thank you." Gong Jie ruffled his hair in disdain. "Why are you being so courteous with me? You're not cute." Yu blushed and felt a little helpless. "Do I have to think about something so far away now?" "Of course. Actually, it's not far away at all. Humans have 7 emotions and 6 desires. When you enter your teenage years and have feelings, it's inevitable that there will be a girl you like. If he doesn't like her and rejects her, what will you do?" Yu obviously didn't take it to heart. "It's hard for me to imagine liking someone. Do I have to live with my wife after getting married? What else?" Chapter 4061. It's hard for me to imagine falling in love with someone. Do I have to live with my wife after I get married? What else? Gong Jie asked. "Do you want to stick to your mommy for the rest of your life?" Yu hesitated for a moment before replying, "If Daddy doesn't mind." "He'll definitely mind. Who doesn't want to be alone?" It was rare for Gong Jie to take Mu Ya's aside and think about it. "Don't tell me you'll become a mommy's boy when you grow up." "I don't know." "Isn't a mommy's boy good?" "Mommy's boy is despised. If you act like this, it'll inevitably cause a fight between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law." Yu's lips twitched. "Uncle, you're not even married yet. Why are you thinking about what will happen after I get married?" Gong Jie snorted coldly and said disapprovingly, "I'm just worried about you." "Uncle, don't worry about me. It's better for you to worry about your own life." When Gong Jie heard this, he smiled indifferently. "I think it's more comfortable to be alone. I'm not interested in women." Oh. When Yu heard this, he couldn't help but feel a little gossipy. "So you're really into men?" Gong Jie frowned and glanced at him. "You seem to be very nosy about my love life." "Get over it. Don't care about what the world thinks." Yu patted him on the shoulder like an old man and consoled him. "Society is very open now. It's not uncommon for men to like men. Love is free. You can fall in love even if you're of the same gender." Gong Jie's eyelids twitched again. It was really hard to imagine that such words would come out of the mouth of a 10-year-old child. It felt very out of place. Gong Jie suddenly changed the topic. "Alice recently took in a girl. Like you, she has multiple personality disorder. She's 18 years old. It's said that she plans to study this girl's illness and delve into this field." When Yu heard this, he was a little surprised. "Multiple personality disorder?" "Yes. Can I see her?" Gong Jie raised his eyebrows. "Why do you want to see her?" "Can't I?" Yu pouted, feeling wronged. Gong Jie couldn't persuade him. "Okay, I'll take you there when you're on vacation." "Yes." Yu paused and suddenly shushed Gong Jie mysteriously. "Don't tell Gong Fan about this, in case he gets sensitive." "Got it." The girl named Lucy mentioned by Alice was being held in Miami's Michelle Hospital. The reason why she was imprisoned was because there was a violent personality in Lucy's personality. Therefore, Lucy was once seen as a dangerous person and was heavily monitored, completely losing her personal freedom. Before Alice took over, Lucy was a patient of Professor Romanka. Professor Romanka was a textbook in the field of psychology and psychiatry. He was also an honorary professor at Michelle Hospital. His attainments in the field of psychiatry and psychology were regarded as authoritative. Lucy was being held in Michelle Hospital and was ordered to refuse all visits. If it weren't for her relationship with Alice, it would be impossible to see her. Before flying to Miami, Alice repeatedly warned Gong Jie not to reveal that Yu had multiple personality disorder when he met Professor Romanka. "This guy is crazy. You have to be careful." Although Gong Jie didn't know why Alice warned him, he agreed unconditionally. Chapter 4062. Alice did not dare to divulge anything. She was afraid that it would be detrimental to Yu Yu if it got out. However, when Gong Jie and Yu Yu arrived at Michelle Hospital, for some reason, Yu Yu felt his eyelids twitch violently when he got out of the car and saw the grand entrance of the hospital. He felt a little uneasy. This hospital gave him a very oppressive feeling. It was like a prison. Children were especially sensitive. Especially children like Yu Yu. In short, this hospital left a bad first impression on him. He could not put his finger on it. He felt that this hospital was eerie. It's like a haunted house. Yu Yu muttered. Gong Jie laughed when he heard that. Instead of calling it a hospital, it's more like Professor Romanka's private research center. Research center? Yu Yu could not help but feel a chill run down his spine when he heard that. What does it research? Of course, it's research on people with multiple personality disorder like Lucy. This Professor Romanka, don't tell me he's experimenting on Lucy and those patients with multiple personality disorder? Anyway, according to Alice, Professor Romanka's methods are appalling. He was also the one who advocated electroconvulsive therapy. However, because it was too cruel and inhumane, it was banned. Yu Yu suddenly sympathized with Lucy. They walked through a long corridor and could not see the end of it. There was a row of floor-to-ceiling windows with colorful church-style prints. It seemed to be related to the mysterious religion of Zong. For some reason, the bright colors were more oppressive than the black and white pictures. Yu Yu held Gong Jie's hand tightly. He felt inexplicably uneasy. He was the one who suggested to take a look, but now he felt like retreating. Gong Jie sensed his uneasiness and held his hand tightly. The warmth of his palm gave him a sense of security. Are you afraid? Gong Jie was a little surprised. Yu Yu nodded and then shook his head. He seemed a little conflicted. He kept turning his head and staring at the floor-to-ceiling window. Suddenly, Alice's words came from behind him. Don't stare at the window. Gong Jie and Yu Yu were startled. They turned around and saw Alice in a white coat walking towards them. Don't stare at the patterns on the window, she said. Why? Yu Yu was the first to question. Is there something wrong with the window? Alice smiled and asked, don't you feel uncomfortable staring at it? Yu Yu was stunned. You must be asking me, how would I know? Yes, indeed. Staring at the paintings on the glass, Yu Yu did feel a little uncomfortable, even oppressed. Don't you think this scene is very familiar? Alice touched his head. Yu Yu shook his head and pondered for a moment. It does feel very familiar, but I can't remember. It is said that this is a world drawn by one of Lucy's personalities. What do you mean? Alice explained. She said that these paintings are the scenes of the land of death. Yu Yu was startled for a moment as he suddenly recalled it. No wonder he felt oppressed when he stared at these paintings. Chapter 4063. Does Lucy know how to draw? Yes, she knows how to draw. After Professor Romanka discovered this talent of hers, he nurtured her diligently and guided her to draw the world that is unknown to the world. Alice walked to his side and lowered her voice. You shouldn't have come to this place. Yu Yu felt an inexplicable fear in his heart. He didn't know why, but his back was unknowingly covered in cold sweat. Alice said to Gong Jie, I'll take you to the office first. Wait for me there for a while. I still have something to talk to Professor Romanka about. When I'm done with my work, I'll come and find you. Gong Jie raised his eyebrows. What's wrong? Alice sighed. Professor Romanka doesn't seem to be willing to let her go. Lucy? Yes. Alice nodded. He wants to continue his research on her and can't bear to give her to me. I'm still communicating with him. This old man always goes back on his words. What a headache. She brought Gong Jie and Yu Yu to a room and told them to stay in the room and not go anywhere. Yu Yu sat down on the sofa and looked around. This was a very large room. There was a desk, 2 stools, a row of sofas, and a row of bookshelves. Other than that, there was no other decoration. Many abstract paintings were pasted on the snow-white walls. The colors were warm and made people feel comfortable. Gong Jie looked at these paintings and suddenly said, once the patient enters this room, these paintings will start to give him a psychological suggestion. Psychological suggestion? Yes. Gong Jie sat down on the sofa. Seeing that you had a strong desire to explore psychological suggestions, he said, someone did such an experiment. A death row prisoner was brought to a room and blindfolded. Then, his limbs were tightly bound. At this time, a doctor used a scalpel and made a shallow cut on his wrist. Blood flowed out. There was a basin beside his hand. Although it was bleeding, it wasn't fatal. However, the doctor opened the cap of the 4-drip bottle, and the water dripped down the tube into the basin drop by drop. At first, the prisoner on death row had a relaxed expression, but as time passed, he began to cry in pain. He began to struggle, and he began to fear death. He thought that the dripping sound was the sound of his blood draining away. He began to complain of a headache, vomiting, and his nerves were tense. And then? Later on he really died. Yu was speechless. How can that be? Scared to death? No. Parasympathetic rebound caused cardiac arrest. Gong Jie continued, when the patient enters such a room and sees these paintings, they begin to be hypnotized and gradually let down their guard. So it's like that. Yu suddenly felt that doctors were very scary. Gong Jie saw through his thoughts at a glance. Do you think it's scary? A little. That's right. Don't find a wife who studies medicine in the future. He was actually in the mood to make such a cold joke. Yu did not sit still. He stood up and walked around the ward. Then, he walked to the office desk and sat down on the leather chair. When he sat down, he vaguely saw a dark shadow under the desk. Yu looked at the edge of the bed and saw a snow-white shirt through the light. He was so shocked that he stood up immediately. When Gong Jie saw this, he walked towards him vigilantly. Chapter 4064. He was so shocked that he stood up immediately. Under the table, there was a mass of dark shadows. It felt like a person was hiding under the table. Who's there? Yu stared at the shadow warily. When Gong Jie saw this, he walked towards him warily. What's the matter? Yu said to him, someone's hiding under the table. Upon hearing this, Gong Jie also became alert. He glanced at the shadow and said coldly, Who's down there? Shh. A childish voice came from under the table. Yu could vaguely tell that the voice belonged to a 7 or 8-year-old girl. A little girl? There was someone in the room? Gong Jie was also very surprised. When he and Yu entered the room, although they didn't pay much attention, with his vigilance, he wouldn't have only noticed if there was someone in the room. This girl was hiding there. Even her breathing was very light. Yu didn't let his guard down just because it was a child's voice. He casually pulled the curtains open and looked around. The shadows were dispelled. Under the sunlight, a little girl in a white lace one-piece nightgown hugged her knees and squatted under the table. When she saw Yu pull the curtains open, she, who was used to the darkness, instinctively covered her eyes with her hands. She wasn't frightened, but the sunlight was too glaring. Her body shrank into a ball. At first glance, she looked like a furry snow rabbit. Her dark chestnut hair was slightly curled like seaweed, covering her small back. Such beautiful hair, but wrapped around a small face. Under the sunlight, her snow-white porcelain doll skin was even more obvious. It was clean, like a congealed cream, without a trace of impurities. Her face was too small. Her hands weren't big to begin with. When she used her hands to cover her eyes, half of her face was covered. When she gradually got used to the light, the girl finally put down her hands carefully. However, when Yu saw her violet eyes, he was stunned. This little snow rabbit's eyes were pure violet. It was too rare. Purple eyes were rare in this world. The girl's facial features were exquisite and deep. Although she hadn't fully matured yet, one could vaguely see that she had a three-dimensional silhouette. Her ancestors must be of mixed Eurasian origin. The color of the pupils was related to the human race. The further north a race went, the shorter the amount of sunlight they received. As a result, the amount of melanin in their bodies decreased. Therefore, their pupils, skin color, and hair color became lighter. Most Asians had brown pupils, Africans had black pupils, and Europeans had blue, gray, and green pupils. However, purple was a relatively rare color in the world. There were very few people with purple irises. This color had nothing to do with genetic mutations, and it was not considered unhealthy. However, most people with purple irises were Eurasian. The girl was very beautiful, especially her pair of purple eyes that were like precious gems. When she blinked her eyes, they sparkled. Xianxia was also a little surprised. He also saw the girl's purple eyes and was shocked. This could be said to be an extraordinary pupil. Yu frowned and pursed his lips. Before he could say anything, the girl immediately realized and shushed him. Don't let her find out that I'm here. Chapter 4065. Her. Yu could not help but be suspicious. He thought that the girl was referring to Alice or Romanka. Could such a beautiful girl be Professor Romanka's patient? He and Xianxia looked at each other, feeling incredulous at once. Yu could not help feeling curious about her. His interest was piqued as he squatted down to her eye level and looked into her bright purple eyes. What's your name? The little snow bunny tilted her head and revealed a friendly smile. She said softly, Natalia. Natalia? What a nice and special name. Yu nodded and said, My name is Yu. The little snow bunny felt a little strange when she heard that. She muttered, I didn't ask for your name. Yu did not know whether to laugh or cry when he heard that. This little girl was too cute. Yu pretended to be sad. Don't you want to know my name? The little snow bunny shook her head gently. No. Why? Because I don't know you. The little snow bunny was not as friendly as Yu. She was still curled up in a small corner. Obviously, she did not want to talk to him. Don't talk to me. Otherwise, she will definitely find out about me. Find out about you. Yu was getting more and more curious. Who? Alice? The little snow bunny ignored him. She hugged her knees and squatted in the corner. If one did not look carefully, she really looked like a furry snow bunny. What a strange girl. Just as Yu was feeling puzzled, Alice opened the door and walked in. She looked around and saw Yu and Xianxia standing by the bed. She asked without much hope, Did you see a 7 or 8-year-old girl with chestnut-colored hair? A girl? Xianxia instinctively glanced under the table when he heard that. Alice did not catch his subtle glance. She continued, Yes, I think you didn't see her either. It's strange. The surveillance camera showed that she came here, but it didn't capture her after she turned a corner. This is a blind spot. A living person just disappeared into thin air. Yu guessed that Alice was looking for her and that Natalia was hiding from Alice. He looked at Natalia, but she kept winking at him with her hands clasped together. She was obviously begging him not to reveal her hiding place. Yu was quick to react. Alice saw him staring at the bottom of the table. She could not help but become suspicious. She walked over and followed his gaze. When she saw Natalia, she saw her. When she saw her, she saw Natalia, and saw Natalia's. U's. 2. So you're here, Natalia. I've been looking for you for a long time. Alice pinched the tip of her nose, but Natalia slapped her hand away unhappily. She pouted angrily and glared at Yu. She was obviously blaming him for revealing her hiding place. Yu felt a little wronged. He did not reveal it. Are you playing hide and seek? Alice nodded. Yes, I guess so. I'm taking her back to the ward now. When Natalia heard that they were going back to the ward, her smile disappeared. She threw a tantrum. I don't want to go back to the ward. Chapter 4066. Yu was a little surprised to hear that. Is she your patient? Alice shook her head and said, She is Professor Romanka's daughter. Daughter? She didn't look like one. She didn't look like one at all. As an Asian, she looked at foreigners with the same face. But Yu could tell. Professor Romanka had an aquiline nose and a well-defined face. He looked like a typical European man. Natalia, on the other hand, didn't look like she was of European descent. Her skin wasn't sickly pale either. Wait for me here. I'll be right back. With that, Alice carried Natalia out of the room. Through the window, Yu caught sight of his mother's gloomy expression. Her eyes were tinged with worry, and it was clear that she was very resistant to the idea. He was determined to get to the bottom of this. So when Alice came back, he went straight to the point. Natalia isn't Professor Romanka's biological daughter, right? Alice was obviously a little surprised. She didn't bring him to meet Professor Romanka officially. How did he know? Yu saw her suspicion and explained, There is a portrait of him in the hospital. It says that he is Professor Romanka. It should be his photo, right? Alice was surprised. I didn't expect you to be so observant. So, she's really not his biological daughter. Gong Jie looked on coldly. His nephew seemed to be especially sad about that girl. Love at first sight? First awakening of love? Yu didn't notice Gong Jie's meaningful look. He said seriously, she seems to be very unhappy. She has been avoiding you. Alice said helplessly, because she refuses to go back to the ward. She's a patient? I guess so. Guess so. Yu wasn't satisfied with this vague explanation. Your explanation is too far-fetched. You seem to care about her a lot. Alice also noticed this. Natalia is indeed very beautiful. Just like a porcelain doll. Don't change the topic. All right. Alice immediately raised her hands in surrender and replied, she's an orphan. She was adopted by Professor Romanka when she was 3 years old. At that time, Natalia was just an ordinary little girl. But, now, she's just like you. Yu blurted out, do you have dual personality disorder? If she was like him, wouldn't that mean she had a split personality? Alice nodded. Yes. Suddenly, she pondered for a moment and decided to tell the truth. However, her other personality was cultivated by Professor Ramaga. Nurture? Not to mention Yu, even Gong Jie was surprised. Can one's personality be cultivated? Gong Jie was also suspicious. Previously, Alice had mentioned this idea. However, at that time he thought it was just an idea. He didn't expect that personalities could really be cultivated. For a patient with dual personality disorder, the other personality is originally a split from the main personality and cultivated. Just like you. Gong Fan's personality was also cultivated subconsciously in your heart. Therefore, if the main personality can be cultivated, the outside world can also cultivate it. Was that so? Could a normal person also cultivate a second personality through cultivation? Chapter 4067. When Yu heard this, his face turned cold. Can I take it that Professor Romanka adopted her to use her as a test subject? Alice hesitated for a moment. Not all of it. Not all of it? Yes, Professor Romanka never had a child in his life. He found Natalia in the orphanage, so he adopted her as his daughter. Later, he was too obsessed with this field and wanted to conquer it, so he did not hesitate to use Natalia as a test subject. Yu's eyes turned even colder. Don't you think this is cruel? Science is very cruel. Their existence is to find and conquer the difficult problems in this field. They don't care about ethics and morals. I also said that most of us are crazy. Just like the Hurricane Group, the world thinks that Hurricane Group is the cause of war, and they also think that the Hurricane Group is cruel. But isn't the real cruelty the deep-rooted ambition of human beings? Alice's words made Yu a little angry, but he was speechless. She was right. Humans were cruel and selfish. Scientists were not philanthropists. They would do anything to achieve their goals. No wonder when she heard the footsteps, especially when she heard Alice's voice, Natalia felt as if she was facing a great enemy. No one wanted to be locked in such a cold and miserable ward. For some reason, Yu felt especially sorry for her. Maybe he had the same memory as Natalia. When he was young, he was locked in a snow-covered ward, unable to see the sun. He felt that the world was cold. For some reason, Yu felt a little depressed. Alice could tell that he felt sorry for Natalia. I am negotiating with Professor Romanka now. Alice squatted in front of him and said gently, I have discussed with him. Lucy will stay by his side and I will take care of Natalia. Really? Yu widened his eyes. Professor Romanka is willing? What do you think? Alice smiled. Dual personality disorder and multiple personality disorder are two completely different fields. Professor Ramaga is obviously more interested in multiple personality disorder. Multiple personality disorder was definitely the result of a split personality, but a split personality did not necessarily result in multiple personality disorder. In terms of the value of the test subject, it was obvious that Lucy was better. Although Natalia was his daughter, they weren't related by blood, and their relationship wasn't that deep. At least for that lunatic, academic achievements were definitely more important. That's why I'm confident that the negotiations will be successful. This way, I'll be able to bring Natalia back. Yu frowned slightly. Gong Jie asked with concern, Did you bring Natalia back for research? When Yu heard this, she was instantly alarmed. Really? He immediately thought of the horrifying and cruel human experimentation. Alice didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You two are singing the same tune. I haven't said anything yet. Why are you both glaring at me so fiercely? Am I that crazy in your eyes? You didn't think much of it. Don't you think you're crazy? Xianxia added. You're no better than Professor Romanka. A woman who always talked about dissection. A woman who could stand in the dissection room and elegantly taste red wine. Chapter 4068. Alice wanted to cry but had no tears. She felt that in the eyes of Yu and Xianxia, she had become the representative of the devil. However, was she really that scary? Although there were some twists and turns in the process, Yu still managed to see Lucy as he wished. She was locked up in a ward. Although it was said that she was receiving humanitarian treatment, she was no different from a criminal. Yu saw that there were all kinds of surveillance cameras installed in the ward. There were 2 in one corner and more than 10 in the whole room. It could be said that they were monitoring her from all directions. Yu guessed that there might be surveillance cameras installed in the washroom as well. Professor Romanka would not let go of any blind spots to observe Lucy's every word and action. In the ward, there was a door that isolated Lucy from the outside world. There was a window on the door with a metal grill. Through the grill, Yu saw Lucy sitting in front of the study table alone, quietly drawing. From this perspective, Lucy was no different from a normal person. In fact, people with multiple personality disorder usually looked no different from a normal person. However, Yu knew that people with multiple personality disorder were completely different from normal people. Who is she now? Xianxia asked curiously and lowered his voice. Alice shook her head. After looking for a while, she was also confused. If she is drawing, she should be Lucy. She likes drawing very much. Usually, when she has nothing to do, she will quietly draw by herself. Yu did not feel good. He was glad that he was protected by so many people. Be it his daddy, mommy, Xianxia, Xiaochen and Lisa, they were all protecting him with all their hearts. Back then, for some reason, a professor knew about his condition. He was a famous psychiatrist in London and wanted to bring him over to study his condition. Xianxia vehemently disagreed. At that time, the professor was sincere and repeatedly emphasized that if it was delayed, he was worried that his condition would worsen. However, Xianxia's attitude was even more unyielding. On the surface, Tongning did not reveal her intentions. But, deep down, she knew that even though this professor claimed to be researching Yu's condition for his own good, his motives were not pure. He simply wanted to use Yu to complete his research. Xianxia was very determined. Even if her condition worsened, she did not want Yu to be like those patients with multiple personality disorder who were imprisoned by the hospital like prisoners. Every day, they faced the snow-white world without any freedom. Yu had experienced this kind of helplessness and loneliness since she was young. She didn't want Yu to face it again. Mu Yaja was also very protective of Yu. Whether it was Yu's personality or Gongfan's personality, he treated them all the same. He firmly believed that even if Gongfan's personality wasn't the main personality, he was still a part of Yu. They were both his son. Lucy had been locked up here for a long time. Originally, she only had 5 personalities. But now she had 10 personalities. As for the other 5 personalities, they were not split from her body. Professor Romanka had used hypnosis to create a dream for her. Furthermore, the split personality was completed in the dream. Chapter 4069. Professor Romanka took an unconventional approach. He created a police personality and kept hypnotizing that personality. He wanted to urge that personality to destroy all of Lucy's bad personalities. Destroy all of them? When Yu heard this, he felt a chill run down his spine. How? Professor Romanka is preparing an experiment. An experiment? Yes. Alice explained. He wants to gather all the personalities together through the dream. Then, he will awaken the personality that represents the police, and make it a part of the main body. He will also tell her to kill the few evil and negative personalities and leave behind the only good main personality. If this experiment is successful, then he will definitely achieve absolute academic results in the field of multiple personalities. Too selfish. Yu frowned. What's the difference between this and killing people? Alice was silent for a while. I agree with this idea, but I don't agree with his method. I also think that this method is too cruel. Moreover, it treats the symptoms but not the root cause. Today, he can use the good personality to kill the bad personality. How can he prevent the good personality from becoming bad? How can he prevent a new bad personality from splitting? I have argued with him, but he is stubborn. I can't persuade him. So, Lucy will become a test subject. Alice nodded and smiled. I can't help you even if I want to. After all, I'm not an authority in this academic field. I have no right to speak. Moreover, Lucy is also a patient he took over. I can't interfere with his treatment. Yu suddenly became alert. If his experiment is successful, then, will you repeat this experiment on me? Alice was speechless and said helplessly, if I use you as an experiment, your uncle will definitely tear me into pieces. Gong Jie expressed that he was implicated. Am I that scary? You're scarier than I said. Alice said tactfully, if I dare to use this treatment plan on your biological nephew, you will definitely let me die without a burial place. Not to that extent. Gong Jie's expression was nonchalant. Because you don't dare to either. Alice could not help but laugh when she heard that. She glanced at Yu and shrugged. Yu covered her mouth and giggled. This uncle of mine is still quite protective of me at critical moments. Gong Jie rubbed his head in annoyance. That's right. Shouldn't I protect you when it's not critical? Great. All right. Uncle is the best. After being praised by Yu, Gong Jie could not help but feel smug. Is uncle better or daddy better? Both are fine, Yu answered ambiguously. Gong Jie did not give up and continued to ask another question. If you were given two choices, play with your uncle or play with your daddy, which one would you choose? He seemed to be deliberately making things difficult for her. Only a resentful woman would ask such a question. Alice said coldly, is this a question that only divorced people ask about their children? Gong Jie said arrogantly, why? Can't I ask? As he said that, he looked at Yu expectantly. Yu pondered for a long time and finally answered honestly, Daddy is fine. Why? Gong Jie looked hopeless. How was he inferior to Mu Yaja? Chapter 40-70. Oh my God. This was a critical hit. How could they bully him like this? Critical hit. This was the highest level of public display of affection that Gong Jie had ever seen. How could you bully him like this? Alice could not stand it anymore. You're just shooting your uncle in the heart. Gong Jie clutched his heart and expressed his sadness. You're hurting my heart. Alice smiled and suddenly raised her wrist to look at the time. Realizing that it was getting late, she said, all right, I still have something to do here. This hospital has a huge back garden. You guys can take a stroll around. I'll fight with Professor Romanka for Natalia's custody. With that, she left. Gong Jie felt bored staying here, so he wanted to take a stroll in the back garden. Yu agreed. He had come this time to see what kind of treatment plan was for his dissociative identity disorder, but ever since he entered this hospital, he had only felt endless depression. Initially, he wanted to consider whether to accept treatment, but now, it seemed that he had to give up immediately. I don't want Gong Fan to disappear. Yu said truthfully, if he disappears, I'm probably not a complete me. Gong Jie agreed. I also think that the treatment plan so far is not suitable for you. However, don't worry. No matter how bad the situation is, there will be a way out. You don't have to worry too much. Yu frowned as he felt a headache coming on. I just feel that my mental state has been a little bad recently. What's wrong? I keep feeling like I can't wake up. I go to bed early, but when I wake up, I still feel very tired. Moreover, the symptoms of memory loss are becoming more and more obvious. Memory loss? Yes. In the past, I might have vaguely understood what happened to Gong Fan's personality, but now that his personality is becoming more and more independent, the two personalities have drawn a clear line. After I become me, I have no idea what happened before. When Gong Jie heard this, his originally relaxed brows knitted again. Don't worry first. I'll ask Alice later. There should be ways to suppress these. Yes. Yu saw a swing in the garden, so he walked over and sat on it. Gong Jie raised his eyebrows when he saw him sitting on the swing. Aren't you going to take a walk? No, I'll sit here for a while. You go walk around. Okay. Wait for me here. I'll be back soon. As Gong Jie said so, he walked around the small path and strolled around the back garden. He preferred gardening. He had invested in real estate all over the world, whether it was villas or bungalows, but gardening had to be of the highest standard. It had to be said that the interior of Michelle Hospital was worlds apart from a garden. The environment in the hospital was so depressing, but the back garden was unbelievably beautiful. It was said that the garden design had won a world-class award. The hospital was established by Professor Romanka, who was particularly picky when it came to garden layouts. Gong Jie was interested, so he walked around the small path, half sightseeing and half taking a stroll. Yu was a little bored, so he sat on the swing and swung his legs. Just as he was bored to death, he caught a glimpse of a snow-white figure from the corner of his eye. Chapter 4071. Even though she was not far away, Yu could not see her features clearly as she was hidden in the shadows. However, he could still tell from the corner of her snow-white shirt that it was Natalia. Wasn't she in the ward? Yu was so shocked that he stood up from the swing. Natalia seemed to have felt his gaze as well. She avoided his gaze and turned to leave. Natalia! Yu had just called out to her. The figure paused for a moment and immediately ran in another direction. Wait! When Yu saw this, he immediately chased after her. Natalia did not run very fast. After all, Yu was taller than her. In a flash, he was about to catch up with her. However, Natalia changed direction and quickly hid in a corner. Yu chased after her again. When he turned the corner, he raised his head and realized that it was the entrance to the ward building. When he turned the corner, he raised his head and saw Natalia's snow-white figure flickering in and out of view. Wait! Yu did not know why she had run when she had seen him. He also did not know why she had appeared in the back garden. Wasn't she in the ward? Could it be that she had snuck out again? Yu chased after her regardless of the consequences. He followed her figure and turned down many corridors. Finally, he saw her at the entrance of a medicine changing room. That was the end of the corridor. She seemed to be lost. She looked around and did not know where to go. Yu stopped in his tracks and called out softly, "Natalia?" She was obviously frightened. When she turned around and saw that it was him, she did not look too good. Her purple eyes were filled with anger. She was obviously angry. Humph! She snorted. However, this snort was not annoying. It was like the meowing of a kitten. He could not help but feel tender affection for her. Yu guessed that she must have been angry because he had accidentally exposed her whereabouts and had caused her to be captured by Alice. Hence, she couldn't help but feel angry when she saw him. "It's you." Natalia was fluent in Chinese. However, Alice had also mentioned that Natalia had met the child in a welfare home through a good friend when Romanka visited China. Natalia had grown up in China, so she was probably of mixed Eurasian descent. Alice said that Natalia was an abandoned child. No one knew who her mother was or who her father was. She was found at the entrance of the maternity hospital in winter, wrapped in swaddling clothes and curled up in a paper box. When she was found, her face was red from the cold and she was dying. She was so cold that her face was red. If it had happened a little later, he might have been frozen to death. Before Professor Romanka met her, Natalia did not have a name. There were so many children in the welfare home and they were all referred to by numbers. Natalia was called 9, because she was the 9th child to be found that year. "I'm sorry." Yu apologized sincerely and guiltily. "I really didn't mean to betray you just now." Natalia did not buy it. She pouted and glared at him. She did not want to forgive him. Yu looked a little uneasy. He asked tentatively, "Are you still angry?"